PTF back with you with another one of the more popular guests we ever have on these In the Money airwaves. He's also another Hall of Famer, an NHC Hall of Famer. I'm wearing my blue and orange, maybe tipping the horse we're going to talk about today with Duke Matties. Duke, how are things?
Pete, everything's good. It's great to be a Hall of Famer.
Well-deserved.
I'm not a Hall of Shamer.
Maybe we'll pause on that. Another show, we need to go deeper into that whole experience. But for professional horse players such as yourself to be honored by your peers must have been a great honor in all seriousness.
It really was. And to keep it quick, I met a lot of people that I did not know I had fans out there. So it was really something that, I enjoyed it, and I didn't do well this year, but it didn't really matter because the award kind of made up for it. It was a lot of fun.
Let's talk about this year's Kentucky Derby. All eyes on it. We record this a couple of weeks out. I'm rocking my blue and orange, the New York Mets colors, the Mike Rapoli colors. Rapoli's had sort of a checkered history in this race with a couple of horses that were going to be favored who didn't actually make it to the gate. Hopefully this one makes it to the gate. Do you think he is going to be the winner of this year's Kentucky Derby?
Fierceness is an interesting horse. He is the fastest horse in the race. There's no question about it. There's not a doubt that he's the fastest horse in the race. But he has issues. He has issues when things don't go his way. And that's going to be the key. The key is going to be the draw. The key is going to be if he breaks sharply, I assume they'll send him. If he doesn't make the lead, I don't like his chances. It's like, or if at least he's not stalking. He has to be in the first flight of horses, or otherwise I don't see him winning. Because the two times that he's been in that position, he's basically he hasn't beat a horse, has he? He's beat a few, but he hasn't beat anybody that's anything special. Now, who knows? It might rain, might be muddy too. Pletcher's won his two Derby winners. Pletcher has had, believe it or not, both came on muddy tracks. Super Saver and Always Dreaming. Fierceness didn't fare too well in the mud the day was it the Champagne? Is that the day that he acted up a little bit in the gate and he didn't like any mud in his face. So, there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of good things about him. And there's a lot of bad things about him, especially in a 20 horse field. He runs speed figures that are dominant. They're so dominant. They're more dominant than any horse that we've had going into a Derby in a while. We don't have horses that run 110 speed figures that have come into the Derby like this. Not in a long time. You see horses like Justify and American Pharoah. They didn't run 110s coming into the Derby. Smarty Jones, I think, did. But this will be interesting for Todd because I don't know when. Do you remember the last time he was favored in a Derby?
That's a great question, and I don't. He had a couple that were gonna be in the form of Forte and Uncle Mo, but they didn't quite get there.
I'm not sure he's ever had the favorite that actually raced.
I can't wait to see how this plays out. I contend that if this were just a race on a Thursday at Aqueduct with the speed figure gap between Fierceness and the rest of his rivals, that he'd be something on the order of an even money shot. I think with all the attendant hype around this race, the seriousness of some of the other contenders, especially Sierra Leone, there's a world in which he's not even favorite. He's not even the favorite internationally right now. Is there a chance we can actually get value on this horse?
That would be surprising that he wouldn't go off favored. But, man, I didn't know that. That's news to me that he's not favored in the market, huh?
7-2. The Sierra Leone 7-2 best price, Fierceness 4-1 best price.
Wow. If he draws well, and obviously he worked so far. He worked one time since his last race, and he worked really well. He was just basically was a 6 furlong just jog around the track, and he buried the work made with ease. But that's what he's good at. He's fast. He's fast by himself. Let's say he draws one. What do we do if he draws one? He's not going to be favored if he draws the one hole, because everybody's going to say he's got to be sent so hard that, from a one hole. It's just going to be interesting. He's one of those horses that I think if you do get 7-2 and he draws like a 7 or an 8, He's probably worth 7-2 all day. I mean, that's what I think Smarty Jones went off when he won. I think he was 7-2, which was like a gift for the speed figures he was running. And if you compare those two horses, they're kind of similar, except for Smarty Jones. I don't think had any really bad races like Fierceness does.
The good races were similar, and Smarty didn't have the bad ones, and still he was a bettable favorite.
Yeah. So it's tough. I think he's gonna win if he breaks good and everything goes well. If he doesn't freak out in the gate or he doesn't do anything crazy, I think he will win.
What's the ideal draw for Fierceness? Do you want to see him in the middle there, or is it a case of the wider the better in your thoughts?
Well, it could be but the problem with me going wide is if they don't break super sharp, you could get hung. You don't want to be hung 5-6 wide in the first turn at Churchill. That's one thing you don't want to do. You want to be 3 wide, stalking. That's a perfect position. So I always think 7-10 would be the right numbers for him. But I'm not sure. As long as he doesn't go inside 7, I think, and outside of 14, I think that'll be so anywhere between 7 and 13, 8 and 12, I think would be perfect for him. Are they doing that based on, is it just random?
I think it's random draw again. Remember, they had a different system for a while, but I think it's just going to be who pulls the pill.
Well, it'll be interesting for him. I don't think it matters so much with a horse like Sierra Leone, who comes from behind. I don't think that's going to matter. That's probably his main rival, but he doesn't get anywhere near Fierceness's speed figures when when Fierceness is at his best.
These mini pods are brought to you by Free Reign Coffee Company. They've been powering the In the Money team throughout the Triple Crown prep season, and the coffee is fantastic. Whether you're looking for whole beans, grounds, or pods, Free Reign give you what you need to get up and get after it. And they've got subscriptions available too, so you never run out. Use our promo code MONEY20 for a 20% discount site-wide over at freereigncoffee.com. $4 million. That's how much original ITM Plus subscribers and contributors have won at the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge over the last 5 years. ITM Plus is the place for our best Kentucky Derby information, including grid picks from the team, trip notes, and specific betting advice. Sign up today at inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Couple more points I wanted to bring up. One, you mentioned to me off air that you think Fierceness might have a tell for when his mind isn't on the game, when things are going to go wrong. Something you noticed in those couple of poor starts.
Yeah, this morning I went and watched the 2 races that he ran poorly, and both times right about 5 seconds before the start, he was fidgety in the gate. He kind of went forward, came back. Both times he broke about a half length slow. So it could be something you could see if he's fidgeting around in the gate or something, or if he's not acting, and the other times he didn't do that and he broke like a shot. So, I mean, especially last time in Florida Derby. So, there's little things you can pick up on, but, betting wise ahead of time, you don't know what, you don't know what he's going to do. Like you said, you gotta get the Betfair bet 3
in
seconds.
Running.
then you take whatever they give you if he's in front.
It's
an interesting derby
for sure.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk to you, Duke, about the betting strategy for this race. You also, I thought, had a really good thought about that with a horse like Fierceness, who's potentially just going to be the fastest and roll, but then has these question marks that could lead to a totally subpar effort. How are you thinking of approaching him from a wagering standpoint this far out?
Well, he's a must use in all horizontal bets. Obviously, I mean, he's got to be used in picks. So I mean, he could be a single possibly. If you think 7-2, I mean 7-2, I think is fair. I think it's all of it's fair if you can get that in the pick bets. Now, as a race itself, I think he's a horse you want to use on top. I don't think he's a horse you want to key first, second, and third. No, I'm just going to key him on top. And if he wins, that's the only spot I got him in. I think that's a way people can actually make good amount of money because the tries and supers in the Derby, they always pay. I mean, there's no lack of price in the Derby, even with favorites winning. So I would tell people to just put them on top and find your horses underneath, and then toss them. Then play some box things, box some horses and exactas without him. And I think those are two good ways to go about using fierceness.
PTF and Gabby Gaudet here to talk about Sierra Leone as part of our Kentucky Derby Monster Pod, which will appear in its original form as mini pods up on YouTube. If you want to check out the content over there, make sure also to leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of Sierra Leone and his chances. But want to ask you, Gabby, straight away, how serious of a contender for the Kentucky Derby is this horse?
He's extremely serious. I think he is hands down the most talented horse in the group, and that includes fierceness. When I've seen him in the past, even in the bluegrass, he's a horse that's just starting to really figure out how good he is. And I can get into that in more detail, but this is a horse who I think still has untapped talent. And if that's the case, that's pretty freaky.
If that's the case, they might all be running for second. You've had a chance to see him in person. Obviously, you've been following him since his 2-year-old year, but I know you saw him earlier this year and then got to see him again in his romp in the bluegrass, which we can show the stretch run of on screen here. How had he changed between those two starts? How had he changed? What kind of a trajectory is he on? Why did you say that about the untapped potential?
Physically, he is everything you want to see in a racehorse, in a Derby contender. He just has all of the pieces. He looks like a stallion already. He's just a physically beautiful specimen. You can understand why they spent $2.3 million for him at public auction at the Keeneland September sale, because of all of the bits that comprise him. He's just a beautiful horse. Why I say that he has untapped potential, I interviewed Tyler Gaffleone after the race, and he said he asked this horse coming down the stretch, and it was like, whoa, like he had to sit back into the stirrups a little bit because of that explosive kick that this horse has. And it wasn't a straight kick. He kind of leaned in a little bit. He leaned out a little bit. He was going not all over the track, but he wasn't maintaining that straight path. And it just shows you how many gears this horse actually has. And he hasn't even gotten to full throttle gear. Obviously, these types of horses with his closing kick, it's difficult in a race like the Kentucky Derby to maneuver. It has happened in the last 2 years with Mage and Rich Strike. So for what it's worth, I think that's a feather in the cap. I would say that I love everything about this horse and his progression. 2 negatives about him. One, of his running style. It is going to be difficult to navigate through 19 other horses likely. And 2, he still has some quirks. When he was trying to go into the starting gate for the bluegrass, he wouldn't go in. There was a roar of the crowd. Every time he would get close to the starting gate, the roar of the crowd would get so loud and he would hesitate going into the starting gate. He was also balking at the tractor attached to the starting gate. And Tyler had a really tough time getting him in there. There was a moment where I thought he was going to be a late scratch because they just couldn't do it. I think it took 3 minutes to get him into the starting gate. Chad said he's going to school him in the gate, but you can't duplicate what's going to happen on Kentucky Derby Day. That would just be my only concern. All that said, Pete, he overcame it. It's not like he got washed out. He's not a nervous horse. It was just something about that experience that day that he didn't like going in the gate.
Did it sound like that was more of a habitual problem for him, or was that something, just a completely new behavior that he'd shown? I can't remember from the earlier starts.
No, it was totally new. And Chad even said, like, this is a horse that does everything well, and it was kind of surprising to him. And so therefore they will be schooling him at Churchill. And yeah, it's not ideal, but you want to see. It was almost like he just didn't want to go in the gate. It wasn't like he was acting up. He was rearing up. He was washed out. He was going crazy. He was losing his cool. He was just like, I don't know about this. Like, I'm a smart horse. I don't know about all these noises. This tractor seems a little claustrophobic. Like, I'm trying to protect myself. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't really like it. Like, that's how intelligent of a horse he is. So I don't think it's going to be a concern moving forward. I really don't.
It sounds to me like he's a horse that almost doesn't know his own strength. The fact that he was accelerating almost too quickly. You're painting a picture of a horse who's like right on the cusp of turning into something even better than he is in terms of both mental and physical stuff. Hopefully having a positive experience in a race like the Bluegrass, maybe it'll be easier. A lot of times with horses, if you know much more about being around them than me, but the first time they do something can be a little confusing. Having done it, having a positive experience, they can improve next out. Is that sort of where you're seeing him sit as we are here, just getting very close to this year's Kentucky Derby?
Yes, and also I talked to Chad before the Bluegrass, and I asked him, why does he find this race to be so important as that final prep race for the Kentucky Derby? Because obviously he did it with Good Magic, he did it with Zandon. Some others are escaping me, but
those were the two that ran really well, though. Those were both
Yeah.
in the money hopes for that ran great, all things considered.
And I think part of it is because it's a grade 1. And it frames out really nicely from the Risen Star to the Bluegrass to the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, he took the same path with Zandon. But he also said it's really important to him to get these horses in Kentucky. And so he shipped him in early for the Bluegrass, win the Bluegrass, and then he stays in Kentucky. And that, I think, is a huge benefit. Sometimes my husband always used to say, you either want to ship in on top of the race or you want to ship in like a month out, because everything in the in between, it can be really hard for horses to acclimate. And I really think that that's why Chad has found this prep race to be so strong. And it will help a horse like Sierra Leone, who is just starting to figure things out, figure out his own talent. And he's going to have the ability to be in Kentucky at Churchill leading up to the Derby.
We look forward to hearing more from you, Gabby, and your work at Keeneland and around the racing world. And we look forward to hearing more about Sierra Leone. We're going to have plenty more updates between now and the Derby, but very happy to get our Monster Pod / Mini Pod series off to a great start with you, Gabby. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me on.
PTF back with another one of the most popular guests that we have on these airwaves. Very excited to welcome him back to the Monster Pod / Mini Pods to talk about Forever Young from NBC Sports. It's Randy Moss. Randy, how are things, buddy?
Hi, Pete. You like my studio here? I'm in my car.
Looks very high tech.
Obviously. You just have to make do with what you got, right? Okay.
You made it look exactly like the interior of a car, which is impressive. That level of
amazing.
detail.
It took a lot of props to do this, yes.
I was really interested when I asked you early on in this process which horse you wanted to talk about, and you said Forever Young, which I felt like was perhaps tipping the hand that this is a horse that you might have what so many people have been looking for, some speed figure information. I did a little bit of half-baked work and came up with some ideas. I'm not even going to bother you with that because I have a feeling you're going to have some knowledge about how fast this horse is. We know he's good. We know he's talented. We know he's beaten what they put in front of him. But how fast is Forever Young?
He's pretty fast in relation to the other American 3-year-olds. I mean, other than obviously Fierceness and the way he ran in the Florida Derby. I mean, I think Forever Young would stack right up there with Sierra Leone and all that. We don't. Clearly, obviously, we don't publish buyer speed figures for races in Dubai and especially races in Saudi Arabia, but we've got a pretty good idea, a pretty good ballpark of what they would be. In the Saudi Derby, the horse from America, Bookham Dano, around a 1-turn mile, ran a hell of a race. And it took Forever Young everything he could muster to run him down. And our estimated figure is about a 101. It was right in line with what Senor Buscador and those horses ran in the Saudi Cup. I think Senor Buscador ran in there. Anyway, I think he did. But
he did. That was his big win.
Yeah, but then we come back in the Dubai in the UAE Derby. And he got an estimated figure of a 96, but you have to put an asterisk by that because he was 4 wide around both turns. So really, I'm looking at both of those races as being probably in the 102 to 103 range, which puts him clearly with those kind of performances back again at Churchill Downs, puts him right in the mix.
Very interesting. One narrative about this horse, and I don't know how seriously to take it, but I did think it was interesting in the post-race interview when you had the trainer talking about the hood that he wore, which didn't have cup blinkers or anything along those lines. It was apparently just to protect him from kickback. Coupling that with the way they chose to ride him there, sort of untraditionally for over there with no cover, it did make me worry that they think kickback could be an issue for that horse. That wouldn't be to his favor at a race like the Kentucky Derby, but is that something we need to be worrying about with a horse like Forever Young, or will that be covered in the price that he's going to be on the day, do you think?
Yes, you should be worried about it. I think there are two primary causes for concern here in no particular order. That would be number one, and I don't really understand why the obsession with kickback, because I've gone and I've watched all of this horse's races in Japan, and there were a couple of those races early in his career where he took a substantial amount of kickback over there and won anyway. Now, some of the Japanese have explained that kickback there tends to be a little softer than kickback in the Middle East and kickback in the United States. But if they're going to continue to be so obsessed with kickback that they put a hood on his face with no blinkers because they think it will cushion the blow of the kickback, I've never heard that before. But clearly, to get him out of the kickback in the Kentucky Derby is going to require, in a 20-horse field, the sort of a wide trip that would pretty much doom him if they sort of take that same approach. The other thing to worry about is that after the Dubai World Cup, the same trainer, who's had a lot of success in America, by the way, he was the trainer of Love's Only You and the March Lorraine, the long shot Breeders' Cup Distaff winner. So he knows what he's doing. He was quoted as saying after the UAE Derby that Forever Young did not travel well from Japan to Saudi Arabia. And therefore, he believed that the horse was not quite as well prepared for the Saudi Derby as he was for the UAE Derby. Now, that was roughly a 5,000-mile trip from Japan to Saudi Arabia. To get from Dubai to the United States required a flight to Brussels, then a short layover, then a flight from Brussels to Chicago, then a 42-hour quarantine in Chicago, and then a roughly 6 to 7 hour van ride from Chicago to Louisville, roughly a 7,000-mile trip. That is considerably more difficult travel than he experienced going from Tokyo to Saudi Arabia. And if that bothered him, then that, I think, could be a cause for concern as well for this horse in the Derby.
Perhaps it's a case for the believers of In Yoshito Yahagi we trust. It is a little bit tricky to know what to do with him at this point. Let me ask you this. What's your guess, and this is a tough one, on what price this horse is going to be on the day? Or does it a little bit all depend on what happens the very week he gets here and the narratives and the stories that we're going to hear at that point?
Yeah, well, obviously the narratives and the stories will have something to do with his price, but I put him generally in the 8, 9, 10 to 1 category. I've already made a line for the race, an early line for the race, and I had Fierceness is a 5 to 2 favorite with Sierra Leone second choice at about 7 to 2, and then you go up to Forever Young, right? And then you go from there to Just a Touch, probably 10, 11, 12 to 1. And then you go up and so on from there. So I think he's going to be a decent price. And some of those concerns will obviously be baked into that price. We've seen how the Japanese have dominated internationally. It's probably just a matter of time before they win a Kentucky Derby now that they're actively pursuing it. Whether this is going to be the horse or not, I don't know. But, I mean, this horse is 5 for 5. He's done it on 5 different racetracks. He's done it from way off the pace. He's done it from close to the pace. He's done it with inside trips. He's done it with wide trips. He's done it with travel. So there's a lot to like. Despite the concerns, there's a lot to like about Forever Young.
Do you see him as an A-level contender? I guess that's the key question at the end of the day.
Yes, I do. I consider 4 horses right now to be A-level contenders. Those 4 that I mentioned: Fierceness, Sierra Leone, Just a Touch, and Forever Young. And you're also going to hear a lot about the record of UAE Derby horses in the Kentucky Derby, which is 0 for 19. And I think you need to take that with a colossal grain of salt. for a couple of reasons. Number one, the average price, the average odds of those horses has been 23.5 to 1. If you think back on it, in all the time that Sheikh Mohammed and others have been bringing horses from Dubai to the Kentucky Derby, really only 4 of them came into Louisville with any credentials and any kind of shot at all in hindsight at handling the 1.25 miles. A lot of them were milers, sprinter miler types. Maybe the best they brought over was a horse named Street Cry, who didn't make the race because he suffered an ankle injury a week out. The 3 others were Mendelssohn, who had never experienced kickback, and he was bumped at the start of the Kentucky Derby on a very sloppy track. And not only got a kickback, he got walls of mud in his face, didn't like it at all, and ran last. Then there was Thunder Snow, who turned into a bucking bronc on a sloppy track as soon as the gates opened. I've seen 100,000 races in my life. I've never seen that before or since. So throw him out, and he wound up winning back-to-back runnings of the Dubai World Cup and $16 million on the track. So Thunder Snow is clearly a very good horse. And then the other one was Dermasotogake, who really, I mean, he didn't get off to a great start last year, but it was a race that favored horses that came from well back, witness Mage, because of the fast pace. So I don't really give Dermasotogake that much of an excuse. So really, out of that 0 for 19, Pete, I consider it to be 0 for 1.
Right.
Really, only one horse had a legitimate chance to win the way the race was run and didn't. And it's not like Dermasotogake ran poorly. I mean, he finished 6th in there, made a little run around the turn. So I don't pay much attention to the 0 for 19 in the UAE Derby.
One more question for you, Randy. But first, I do want to put out a call to the viewers and the listeners. Go to our YouTube page, drop a comment in there. Looking to keep these conversations going. And this is one of the videos I think we can get the most lively conversation about Forever Young, because I think there's a lot to be said, and especially if we have fans who might have some speed figure information about the races he's been running in other corners of the world, back home in Japan. We'd love to hear from you in the comments, your thoughts on Forever Young or whoever you think is going to win this year's Kentucky Derby. My last question for you is a speed figure one, Randy, and it really has to do with this year's race favorite, Fierceness. I've said this on 6 of these videos already, but I'll say it one more time. If it was a regular race with the speed figure advantage that Fierceness holds, he would be a much shorter price than the bettable favorite price I believe we're going to get on him under the Twin Spires on the first Saturday in May. Are you enough of a speed figure believer that you think Fierceness might represent value at the likely price he's going to be? Or is this a case where you might pay to take the big speed figures with a grain of salt? Where do you stand on Fierceness?
Where I stand, Pete, if all the horses in the Kentucky Derby run their best race, Fierceness wins by daylight, right? I think that even the competition in the race, I think would give you that. There was nothing fluky about his race in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, nothing fluky about his win in the Florida Derby. I think a lot of people are saying, well, you know, he's not going to get the same kind of trip as he got in the Florida Derby. He controlled the pace. The fractions weren't all that fast. Yeah, but this is not a one-dimensional front runner. He showed that in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile when he set just off of one of the Chad Brown horses in there and then just blew the field away. And he beat Muth by 5 lengths, and look at what Muth has come back to do since then. So, no, I think 5 to 2 does represent a nice price for a horse with the talent advantage that Fierceness has. If he gets slammed at the start, can he overcome it? I don't know. He didn't in the Champagne. He didn't in the Holy Bull. But tell me any horse in that field who's going to get slammed at the start, who is probably going to go on and run his normal race. It's not just Fierceness. And, you know, I think the template here, and we'll be talking about this on NBC, the template for Fierceness with the same rider is the authentic trip from an outside post in the 2020 COVID Kentucky Derby. Johnny Velasquez sort of meted out his speed just a little bit at a time, didn't have to send him, gradually got over from an outside post and was in a great position by the first turn. And whether it's in front or whether it's just off the pace, I think that's what they'll be looking to do, obviously, in the Kentucky Derby, although we don't know what post he's going to get. If he draws an inside post, I might be a little less bullish on Fierceness, but obviously at this point, we don't know what draw he's going to get.
Great overview of Forever Young. Great overview of the race. We'll have you back on much closer to the time where we'll give the full details of all the NBC coverage, the must-watch NBC coverage that week in Derby, and look forward to talking to you and perhaps our other pal if we can bring him back on to make fun of my shirt and give us a few bits of advice too.
You're talking about Super Jog. We'll have him on. He'll be with me next week.
Great stuff, Randy. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Next up on the show, a man who has made a lot of fans over the last year. Started off, I would say, when he decided to do a little bit of therapy in the form of his Pro Player podcast on the In the Money Media Network. And that story ended like a movie with a record-breaking win in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. He's back here to talk about Honor Marie with us. If you want to hear his thoughts on all the Kentucky Derby preps, look for the audio show we did a couple of weeks ago. Find that In the Money Players Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm speaking, of course, of our resident pro player, Sean Boarman. Sean, how are things?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing great. All Derby all the time here in the Brooklyn bunker, but, we wouldn't have it any other way. Just about a week out from heading down to your part of the world there in Kentucky once again. And excited to talk to you about this horse, Honor Marie, who we were chatting about a little bit on the pod. I mentioned to you, when is this a horse that you sort of became aware of / potentially interested in as a betting vehicle? Let's put it that way.
Became aware of him in the Jockey Club as in that 2-year-old race. I thought that was a really nice race, and I noticed he had a good, finished well. Then probably as a betting vehicle when I did the figures for the Louisiana Derby. He's steadily improving, especially in his late pace figures, and he just looks like a horse that could jump up and run a big race to me.
He's a horse that I noted when Frank McGoey came on the podcast before his seasonal reappearance. So it made a big note when Frank had been out clocking in the mornings and said that he was notably not fully fit and looked like one with that upward trajectory. So it seems like one who maybe will be able to peak in this third race of the form cycle in a run like the Kentucky Derby. A few things I want to ask about him of you. One is, you mentioned the Kentucky Jockey Club and the fact that he's had success over the Churchill Down surface. As somebody who's played Churchill very regularly over a number of years, you hear a lot of stories and narratives about how Churchill's a track that some horses like and some horses don't like. How important for you is that horse for course angle, the fact that he's done well under the Twin Spires as far as your interest in him goes? Is that just narrative, or is there something to that idea of the horse for course Churchill?
No, I think there's something to it. I won't necessarily let that prevent me from betting on a horse if they've run there once and haven't run well, or have never run there. But it definitely makes me feel better if I'm trying to bet on a horse that they have prior Churchill form. That's good. I think that's important.
Two other things you mentioned I wanted to follow up on that have come up time and again on the Pro Player podcast we've done. And I encourage folks to go back and listen to those as well. Again, we don't have video. We don't do enough video with you, Sean. You're a handsome man. I don't know why we don't have you on in front of the camera more. But audio only, people. We've got hours of good stuff. If you go back in the archive of iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, if you subscribe to that In the Money Players Pod, you'll be able to listen to this stuff. But you talked about the idea of this horse as one who's improving. Now, I know that sounds pretty basic, bet on a horse that's improving, but a lot of times you hear people, wanting to make excuses for bad last races and come up with clever cases based on a run, maybe 3 races back. It does feel to me in all of our conversations that you really give primacy to that idea of a last race. Well, whether it's just great on its face or shows some signs of improving, a horse sort of touting themselves that they're going to do even better last time. Is that an accurate assessment of the way you look at it? And why is that improving last race so important to the way you play the horses?
Yeah, that's an accurate way of putting it. I think it's important just because these horses go through form cycles, and I think when horses, for Honor Marie, for example, he ran faster at every point of call on my figures than he did in his previous race, and that can only mean the horse is getting better and improving, in my opinion. Um, I don't really subscribe to the idea of that's a negative thing, like a bounce is coming. I just, horses regress, sure, but I don't think that there's a set rule of, well, he ran too big last time, he can't run that back. I always try to play horses that are improving, especially when they improve the way this horse did. He ran faster early, even though he was far back in the pack and was a closer. His pace figures were faster. He ran a 104 late pace figure, which is very, very good for 3-year-olds at this time of year. So the fact that he exerted himself a little more early, still finished, you know, pretty elite for this time of year for a 3-year-old. He's got to be improving, and I love to hear that Frank thought he was a little short because now it'll be 3 times. This will be his 3rd time out this year, and you should get a peak effort, from a horse like this. So that's I don't always bet on training information or clocking information, but when it corroborates what I'm seeing in my figures, I love it, and I think there's just a lot of positive signs pointing to this horse running well.
We got a lot of new people around here coming to us via YouTube. You mentioned about late pace on the shows. You've talked about this many, many times. It's not something you hear about that often in dirt races, even from experienced horse players. It is something you hear about all the time when it comes to turf racing. Why, in your experience, is the late pace figure such an important thing when it comes to evaluating dirt form?
I just think, I try not to look at it on surfaces. It's just, to me, it's how horses finish off a race, especially when combined with how they've run early, is just the most important thing to me. I mean, there's a lot of horses that can run graded stakes type early pace figures that end up as 10 claimers or 20 claimers because they just can't finish races. They can't put it all together and accelerate through the wire, but the best horses can. And, I just think I think it's the most important segment of the race, from a figure standpoint, but it's got to be used in conjunction with the other pace figures and the final figure because, you don't want to bet a horse that has good late pace figures that just is so slow early that it doesn't matter. They're just going to be too far back and can't catch up. And then it all depends on, the type of field they're running in. I mean, in this Derby, the good Fierceness runs some of the best late pace figures. So if he's stalking the pace and runs his A race, even these horses with slightly better late pace figures that are really, really good for 3-year-olds in the Derby, they won't be able to catch him. But if he runs sort of his B race, he could run off the board. So it's just to me, it dictates almost everything, especially from a gambling point of view, because it's underpriced still, in my opinion, in most of the markets.
Let's take another second and look at the race at large. You've made a strong case why Honor Marie is interesting. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that in the UK, anyway, right now, best price is around 33 to 1. We're not talking about one of the favorites when we talk about Honor Marie. But from this far out, and we are asking you this pretty early on, what do you think about the pace scenario for him? Does he have enough early speed with what he's shown lately that he can maybe make his own trip a little bit? Or is he going to be at the mercy of the pace? What kind of pace in general are you expecting in this year's Kentucky Derby?
I think on paper it should be sort of average to slightly above average, but in the Derby, it always seems to get a little bit hotter than it seems like on paper it should. Um, so I'm expecting there to be enough pace for some closers to be involved, and it could get fast if somebody gets brave and tries to really slam out of there, and then the post position draw is going to mean a lot in this Derby too. Um, Honor Marie, in my experience, horses with this kind of profile are eligible to run much faster early than they have in the past. But that just depends on draw and jockey. You sort of, I'm going to guess that he's pretty far back and is probably more likely to round out tries and supers than win the race. But if he gets a draw to where they have to be a little more aggressive and put him in the race sooner to avoid trouble or get a position, I think he can do that. I think he could certainly run mid pack to maybe even close to the top quarter of the field and still run his race. He's talented enough to that. It just depends on so many circumstances.
Where do you want to see him drawn, Sean?
That's a good question. I was thinking about that right before we hopped on here. I think with a horse like this, I don't really want to see him 1, 2, or 3, just sort of to avoid that sort of crunch going into the first turn. But other than that, I think he should be pretty well suited wherever. I mean, if he gets a really wide draw, they're just going to ride him cold and drop back and try to save ground, which suits him fine. If he draws in the middle, that should be fine too. It's just those first 3 or 4 spots, I think, would be the worst.
In terms of your actual betting on the race, I mean, it sounds like you see him as at least a peripheral win candidate, but how do you see using him in terms of your actual wagers?
I think I'll certainly use him in probably everything I do, especially if he's 25, 30 to 1. I I could even see myself potentially keying him and sort of pressing him underneath if I have a clear view on who wins the race. I mean, one bet I will certainly make is a Fierceness Honor Marie Exacta, because I think that could be paying well, and I think it'll be paying better in relation to his chances of running second than like Fierceness over Sierra Leone or Fierceness over Catching Freedom. I think he could be the closer that is underpriced the most. So I think that's a play I'll definitely make. From there, I'm not really sure yet.
Great stuff, Sean. And you say you're not sure yet. We will check back in with you week of. Hopefully, we'll be able to put together a pro player roundtable. We'll recruit somebody else and have the fun chat we've had the last few years. That'll be audio only content. So if there's one message for you watching on YouTube, make sure if you want to get everything, make sure you subscribe to the audio feeds as well. Of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of the great Derby content we have coming down the pike. Sean, thank you so much for your time today, and Godspeed, my friend.
See you soon, man.
Brad, how's Louisville treating you so far?
So far, so good. We've been back since the end of March, and Derby's in full swing and ready to get it on.
I don't think too many people thought it was going to take you too long to get a traditional Kentucky Derby win, but you seem to have a loaded hand here with these 3 horses.
Yeah, no doubt. I think this is definitely the best hand we've had since the Central Quality Mandolin year. That was a strong group there, those 2 colts. But these 3 are really good, and they're all coming into the race in good shape. And obviously, we got to get through the works this weekend, but very happy with the way they all look physically.
Well, this video is titled Encino, so we'll start there, but we're going to also talk about the other 2. Encino. You finally got him on the dirt. I know you wanted to run him in the bluegrass. You didn't like the post. How pleased were you with the way he ran in the Lexington?
I thought he ran a great race. He probably showed a little more speed than we were expecting too. I thought there was a couple horses in there that would maybe give him a target that he could run by later, give him a target to the top of the stretch. And he broke running. I still think he's a touch green. He's still figuring things out. Florent, first time he'd sat on him, had a lot of positive things to say. Maybe not the most polished horse in the world, but there's, I think, a tremendous amount of upside with him moving forward. And listen, it's a big ask, 3 weeks, but we're going to breeze him this weekend if all goes well. We'll entertain the idea of running him.
What do you think about trip wise? Like, look, and look, you have 3 different horses, 3 different owners. I am smart enough to know that there's not going to be horses being used. You're not going to use a damn Godolphin horse to set it up for somebody else. But what do you think's the best kind of trip for Encino in terms of pace?
I think close. And like I said, last time he caught me a little bit off guard with how much speed he showed in the Lexington. I thought there would be a couple once again that would be in front of him, but he found himself on the lead, and I think it's one of those things where in the Derby, normally it is a hot pace. I do think there will be pace, not certain where it'll come from, but it's one of those things where in the Derby it's 20 horses and you got to break and go forward and find your position. And the horses kind of have to sort themselves out themselves. It's Louis Sias taught me that, or told me that when he wrote Essential Quality. There's no you got to break and go because you don't know what's going to happen, who's going to get pinballed into you. So you have to break and try to get some type of position. And I could see him, breaking and being somewhat close, not necessarily on the lead, but somewhere up in the mix early.
These horses always have to answer a lot of questions in the Derby. You've touched on Encino's greenness, being a thing in your mind that you're going to be thinking about. Are there any other concerns? Are you worried about the distance with him, or is that not one of the things that you're worried about?
I don't think so. I think he's by a Derby winner. He's a really good-looking horse. He has a great way of going. His works have been very solid. So, I think given the right trip, he could get the mile and a quarter. If he's on the lead doing too much too early, he's not going to get the mile and a quarter. But I do think he's bred to get the mile and a quarter. And, he's a very efficient mover. His gallops, he's got a great way of going. Since he shipped over to Churchill, he's trained very, very well since the Lexington. So that's obviously gives us the confidence to pursue the Derby.
All right, well, we got you here. Let's talk about some of your shorter priced Derby runners. Let's start with Catching Freedom. We talk about having these horses having to answer questions. He won't have to answer the distance question because he ran extremely well going a mile and 3/16. I think he'll handle the extra 16th. But he does have to answer a question, I think, about breaking a little bit cleaner. You talked about Louis Sias teaching you got to get your position moving forward. Catching Freedom's been a little bit slow away from there. What are your thoughts about the way he's been breaking?
Well, I'll tell you, last time Todd had a horse on the inside of him that broke through the gate in Louisiana Derby, and when that happened, he lunged forward and hit him. He hit the gate himself, and Flavian said it jarred him a little bit, and we didn't think we would be last that day. We thought we'd break, and the way his two works prior to Louisiana Derby, he was breezing much sharper. It gives us the confidence to think that he'd be a little more involved. Obviously, he did lean forward. He banged his head a bit. Flavian said he broke flat-footed, obviously. So I think as long as he stands up in there, he stood in the gate this morning actually and was good. As long as he stands in there and breaks better or gets away a little better or doesn't have any mishaps, he should be able to put himself in the race a little bit easier than he did last time. He was not even involved last time, and I was very, very concerned with the pace, and they kind of stacked up going up the backside. I didn't think he really had much of a chance, but it was a big run. But you're right. I mean, I think going a mile and a quarter, you do need to break and hopefully get a great trip. It's very rare that we see a horse win the Kentucky Derby and says, "Oh, you got a bad trip." I mean, you have to get a good trip in the Kentucky Derby, and I do think as long as he can get away a little better in the Derby as opposed to the Louisiana Derby, he should put himself in a little bit better position.
And then finally, Just a Touch, a horse that's near and dear to In the Money Media and JK+1 with our ties with Qatar Racing. The pace was fast last time. I saw Travis Stone tweet recently that the pace was one of the fastest since moving back to the dirt and the bluegrass. They just came home a little bit slow, which means that Just a Touch ran sneaky good. What are your feelings about him? Do you feel like you're a little bit behind the eight ball, or do you feel very comfortable with where you're at?
Very comfortable. I really like this horse. He's a very talented horse. Bred to do it. He's by a Triple Crown winner out of a Tabbit mare. Plenty of leg, athletic horse, good work horse. We just went an easy half with him after the bluegrass there at Churchill. It's the first time he breezed at Churchill. Very happy with the move. He'll do a little bit more this weekend. But listen, he's one that, hopefully he breaks. He's another one that kind of, I thought broke. Listen, I don't know if it was the difference in winning or losing the bluegrass, but he broke a half step slow in the bluegrass. And obviously Sierra Leone was a little reluctant to load there, and we stood there for 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it was. But I think he's a good colt. I think he's definitely a horse that's I think he's a Grade 1 horse. I really believe that, and we'll see if he's a Kentucky Derby Grade 1 horse. But he's nice and he's tactical, and I do think he's got the talent to win a race like the Kentucky Derby.
But I'm not going to put your feet to the fire on which one of your horses. Let's just get them all around there safe and hope that one of yours is there at the end. But I will ask you this as a future Hall of Famer, in my opinion, someone who's been watching all these horses train, these Derby horses trained, which horse do you want your horse following, right? That's my sneaky way of asking you who's been training good around there. Do you want him following Fierceness, Sierra Leone, Forever Young? Which horse would you want your horse following trying to get out of a hole?
Probably Fierceness or Forever Young. If we're behind Sierra Leone, we may be too far back. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, Catching Freedom may be back there with Sierra Leone, but I would say, close. Listen. I don't know about following anybody. We'll play the break. We'll see how things unfold. We may have 19 following us. We'll see. But I'd say the obviously just a touch and Encino probably be up close and maybe tracking a few. We'll see how it plays out.
Brad will be rooting for the royal blue, whether it be Godolphin, but at least the hat, the Brad Cox hat, will be rooting for that royal blue come the first Saturday in May.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks. Richie, I had to have you for Mystik Dan because I feel like the only reason we're talking about Mystik Dan is a brilliant ride from a jockey, Brian Hernandez. Mig, what did you think about Mystik Dan and Brian Hernandez's ride on Mystik Dan in the Southwest?
Well, I think it was a brilliant ride, which is a consistent trait from Brian Hernandez. I mean, if you watch him ride on a daily basis, day in, day out, he gives his horses every opportunity. He identifies track biases quickly. He's not afraid to ride the inside. I think he's one of the least well-known top riders in the country. For my money, he's top 5 in the country. He chooses to ply his trade in the, Churchill Downs, Kentucky, the Midwest. He could go any place and be a winner. Mystik Dan's run was terrific, definitely aided by that inside trip at Oaklawn Park. But I will say this, it was also the first time they took him back and they, kind of used his speed in a different way. And I'm always of the belief that all top horses possess one similar characteristic. They possess speed. It's how they learn how to dole out that speed that will distinguish them going forward if they're able to stay classic distances, if they're going to be a true top horse.
Well, Mick, I think for people who it's the Kentucky Derby, we get a lot of new viewers and listeners. Explain bias from a jockey's perspective when you're trying to identify those parts of the racetrack that may or may not be advantageous to be on. It feels like Brian found Mystik Dan on the good part of the racetrack, that on the inside. How would you explain how bias kind of works in racing?
I think the best way for someone that, isn't a purist, follows races, is obviously like we do, it's our living, is you're at the airport and you're walking along and then you catch one of those moving sidewalks, right? And all of a sudden you hit that and your pace obviously picks up. And now you're walking on that sidewalk that's ushering you along. You're going to hit a spot where you're just on a firmer part of the track where a horse is going to run over the top of the ground more. They're not going to get bogged down in deeper going. For years at Belmont Park, it was always the outside was the place to be. The Belmont balcony move. You wanted to be 5 or 6 wide. We've seen more prominent lately inside biases where, like Oaklawn Park, when Mystik Dan won under Brian, the inside was the place to be. He was able to get to that position. So now not only are you saving ground, you're on the moving sidewalk. It was a perfect storm, but he still had a horse with enough ability to get where he needed to be and then enough finish under him to get the job done.
Mig, I'm of the belief when it comes to Mystik Dan that his run in the Southwest, although it was a brilliant ride by Brian Hernandez, was bias aided. And that was his best race on paper that we've seen from him. And if he were to be able to duplicate that effort, then I think he could potentially get involved in this Kentucky Derby. My fear is that it was bias aided. And when we came back in the Rebel, it kind of seemed to take a step back and kind of revert back to what his normal performance was. What is your overall view on Mystik Dan as a whole? Do you think that he's a horse that can win the Kentucky Derby, get involved, hit the board, or do you think that maybe that performance is a little bit dressed up?
Well, I do think the performance is somewhat dressed up because of the incredible ride by Brian. But I also will say this: who's to say that Churchill Downs won't have a similar kind of bias on Derby Day? That's something we won't know until we get to the day of and pay attention to the early races. And then you've got the right rider familiar with Churchill Downs to take advantage of it, and you've got a horse that's shifty, a horse that can make multiple moves. You know, a lot of horses have one move in them. Really good horses have two. Great horses have multiple moves in them. They can stop and start. Mystik Dan showed the ability to kind of stop and start. I think what it'll boil down to is what kind of price are you willing to take that he could work out another brilliant trip and take advantage if there is a bias that we've identified before the Kentucky Derby. That, you know, for me, he'd have to be a bigger price, than normal for me to think he can work out a similar trip and take advantage of all of those things.
Maggie, I'd be remiss if I had you on here and I didn't let you tell us who you do like in the Derby, because I think you have one of the greatest opinions looking at horse flesh, how horses move, evaluating races from all your time as a champion rider. Who's got your attention so far? I've got to see the draw, but so far, who's got your attention for the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I'm sorry I don't have notes in front of me, but the horse that worked this morning, is, I think, Quiet Maria. Is that
Honor
does
Maria?
that sound
Yep.
right?
Honor Marie. Honor Marie.
Honor Maria. That horse to me looks like a horse that's just getting really good at the right time. I don't know if the horse is good enough, but I do think that horse will really perform come Derby Day. Sierra Leone, I think we could potentially see a pretty heated pace. Sierra Leone's got a great deal of ability. One thing that worries me about him is he has a tendency to want to lug in a little bit. And if you watch head-ons of his races, he's got that paddling action. And I think that's what kind of, the lack of impeccable mechanics in his stride kind of makes him want to lug in. And you'd hate to have to correct a horse the last eighth of a mile in the Derby if it's close, because when you correct a horse, you have to slow them down a step. Obviously, Fierceness is brilliant, but Fierceness is going to have to show that he's a horse that can overcome adversity, and he has not shown that yet. In a 20-horse field, can you count on getting either the lead the right way or laying second or third in the clear the right way? I mean, I think he has shown that he has the most natural ability. Now he has to show that he can overcome adversity.
Mig, it's always a pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Look forward to it, Jonathan.
Bear, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Just great time of the year. Just wrapped up the tournament, the Masters, obviously, draft, NBA and NHL playoffs, and then that little event on the first Saturday in May that we all love so much. So it's an awesome time of the year, and plenty of action to go around in whatever way you like to, whether it's horses, whether it's sports, whatever. There's a lot to discuss and a lot to bet on, which is a good time of the year.
It's my favorite part about you. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. You always got something going on, and we'll be rooting. We'll be rooting for you to make some money on the draft, so you can then make even more money come the Kentucky Derby. And will that money be made on Just a Touch?
I'm hoping so. I have some nice futures on this horse already at around 30-1 or so, 25-1, somewhere in that range, and I'm guessing he's going to be shorter than that on Derby Day. I know there are knocks on the horse. Obviously, the late start with only three starts in his career. He debuted in January, but I think the horse has really done nothing wrong in his three starts. You broke maiden for fun in the slop at Gulfstream. You probably ran the best race in the Gotham, but in a race that was won by deterministic. After you were hung out wide the entire trip around, you probably ran around about 2 miles in the mile race. So and then the Bluegrass, he just got beat by Sierra Leone. He got a great clean trip and looked like he was shot out of a cannon at about the 8th pole. So he's done nothing wrong, and I think the price is going to be right for him in the Derby. So hopefully he can get there.
Yeah, when it comes to the Bluegrass, I mean, obviously Sierra Leone is going to probably be the second choice in the Kentucky Derby, and deservedly so. But I would say that, it feels like Just a Touch kind of did the dirty work there. That pace Saw Travis Stone posting that the pace was one of the fastest bluegrass paces since moving back to dirt, and the late part of the race wasn't particularly as fast. I think Just a Touch ran sneaky good in that bluegrass.
I think he ran really well. And I think if you look at the Derby, the fact that he's not going to have to do that dirty work, I think you're going to see him be able to sit a little bit further back. Obviously, Fierceness is going to be on the lead. Dornoch will be up. Truck Phantom, Encino, one of the other Cox horses, I think are all projected front runners in this race, and I think that will help potentially soften up Fierceness, and it probably will give Just a Touch a little bit better of a trip where he can probably have a little bit more punch in the lane. And I'm glad you mentioned about Sierra Leone too in that race. Like, this very easily could be a situation like Funny Side and Empire Maker, where Empire Maker won the preps and then Funny Side just got the trip and won the first Saturday in May. So there are many other examples of horses that were floated up a little bit on the board just because of a result in a prep, and we saw them go on. I mean, real quiet. Monarchos. I mean, the examples are many, but I think the fact that he's going to be able to sit that second flight and maybe get to jump on the closers, I think he could fall into a really good trip, and hopefully at a pretty nice number.
Chris, I know you do a lot of things in terms of futures, and price matters. You're not just out here betting to be betting. What are you thinking in terms of a couple of big horses in terms of price? I want to ask you about Fierceness, what price you think he might go off. Just a Touch, what price you think would be acceptable for you to bet him. You've already lived him in the futures to bet him to win on the day. And then just some other horses that you think might be interesting from a price standpoint you want to include in some of the gimmicks.
Well, I think the weather obviously is going to play a big factor in handicapping this race. Like, if the track comes up sloppy, I think Mystik Dan is a horse that you absolutely have to use. And he'll probably be a big number based on how poorly he ran in his last prep. But the prep in the slop at Oaklawn was fantastic. And I think Just a Touch is a horse that in the slop you're obviously going to want to use as well, being that he has the maiden win at Fairgrounds in the slop and ran well in the Gotham on the slop. And that's one of the reasons why I like Just a Touch, because he's shown that he can kind of run on different surfaces and different track conditions, and the breeding suggests that the distance ultimately should be no problem. But what do you think? Fierceness, like 5-2, you think maybe he'll be, and maybe Sierra Leone 7-2, 3-1. Do you think we could get something like that potentially?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I think it could potentially drift a little bit because I think Sierra Leone is going to gather some speed as we get a little bit closer. And I think Forever Young's going to take quite a bit of money as well. That could then take a little bit of the sting away from Fierceness. You know, think about American Pharaoh, I think went off at 5-2, but he was the standout of all standouts. Fierceness is definitely the leader of the pack, but he feels to have a little bit more competition and a little less trust than American Pharaoh did.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I was dead wrong. I didn't like him in the Florida Derby, and he certainly ran to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race that he ran 2 back. But you wonder if he's going to have a little bit more company up front. Like, what will that do? Like, he threw in the towel in the Holy Bull. Like the Champagne, I guess, was a total throwout. But I mean, maybe it was ultimately he just needed that Holy Bull race. But in terms of looking at some other price horses, I'm kind of curious about, like, can Resilience back that up, and like what type of price will he be? Because again, he's another one like kind of typical Bill Mott form. Like, came along slow. Finally, when he got to age 3, he blossomed. He won at Gulfstream in the maiden race, ran bad post in the Risen Star, ran okay. Actually liked him a little bit in the Risen Star, and then in the Wood he just ran huge. Like, is he someone that maybe he could be in that 15, 18 to 20 to 1 range maybe, and be a player?
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. I think probably the later half of what you were talking about, maybe 18, 20 to 1. I think he's going to be a little bit ignored, kind of late to the party a little bit. A lot of times those horses get forgotten, and he's not overly fast from a figure standpoint as well. So I could see him definitely being ignored a little bit.
Yeah, I think the horse that I think if you're looking for price horses, like the price horse that everybody seems to be mentioning is Anna Marie. So, like, I don't think that horse is going to be the price that you expect him to. I think that horse is going to get bet, and certainly a horse coming from off the pace with those Kentucky connections and ran so well in Louisiana and won the Jockey Club at Churchill Downs. People are going to see that. And with the story with Ben Curtis getting the rod and low profile trainer, like this is a horse that I think people are going to bet on. So if you think you're going to get 25-1 or so on this horse, I think you're going to be sadly disappointed. So you're probably going to have to wait until the day of the race, or maybe even Friday once that early betting starts coming in, and see which of these horses might start being a little bit more of an overlay. Because I don't think you're going to get the number that you're looking for on Anna Marie.
Bear, we appreciate you. I suppose we'll see you at Saratoga for the Belmont. Hopefully, it'd be fun if we had a Triple Crown on the line.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance we'll be seeing you up there in June. I'm looking forward to covering that race again. It should be a lot of fun, and the entire week should be great with the racing festival that they have going on. It'll be good to spend a little extra time up there. Usually, being where I am in Connecticut, I usually just kind of do the go up early in the morning, have dinner, and then come back. But to be up there for a few days is going to be fun, capped up by the Belmont on Saturday. It should be a great week.
Bear, we appreciate you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, JK.
Britney, what's going on?
What's going on? I miss you. It's so much fun that we're getting back into the swing of things. Derby 150. Cannot wait. Can't wait to see Churchill Downs, by the way.
I think this is the first time we've ever done anything where I think you're somewhere out there. I can see you, I think.
I'm a stone's throw away from you rather than across the entire country.
There you go. Well, you said Derby 150, a historic one. What are your thoughts on Catching Freedom? I'd like to think that somewhere Brad Cox has a Kentucky Derby, a traditional Kentucky Derby with his name on it.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Flavien Prat, right? I think both of them really want that thrill in the moment of winning the Kentucky Derby. With Catching Freedom, I feel very in the middle with this horse. I feel like there's a lot of positives. Obviously, the Louisiana Derby has been such a productive race, especially over the last few years. He's raced well at Churchill Downs, having won there, so he knows the track. And having gone the mile and 3/16 in the Louisiana Derby, you would think that getting a mile and a quarter is no issue. All of that being said, though, it's his running style. I feel like in this age where you don't have those crazy speedsters that we used to have with now this point system, you're not going to get a wicked pace. I know we saw what Rich Strike did a couple of years ago, but I don't feel like that's going to play out in Derby 150. So he's not as tactical as I would like him to be going into that first turn. But hey, Brad Cox did say he's not going to break as slow as he did in the last race. But I'm just concerned that he's going to be that horse that's, mid-pack or further behind. And he's grinding it out, but maybe doesn't get there in time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's some pluses and there's some minuses, right? I mean, I think that when it comes to the question that all of them have to answer is, do they want to go a mile and a quarter? He's kind of answered it with the mile and 3/16 win. You like to think that he'll be finishing his race, but I'm not a huge fan of closers in the Derby. They need everything to kind of go their way.
Right. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why when you look at a horse like Fierceness, yes, everybody's talking about him because he's one of the fastest. And if he's on his A game, he's very tough to beat, but he's tactical. And I think that's what really works in his favor. When you talk about the post position draw as well, I mean, where do you want Catching Freedom to be? Probably on the outside so he doesn't get so shuffled back and mitts horses going into that first turn. I feel you on the closers. I think it's really, really hard. You have to have a perfect setup. And how do you get a perfect setup in a field of 20? It's not as likely.
You need them to go really, really fast. And I think you make a great point. Since the point system, these sprinters just aren't there. They're not in there being as disruptive as they've been in the past. And things just have to really go their way. As far as he goes, I do trust horses that have shown some consistency at different racetracks. Like he doesn't have to have, that's nice to know. He doesn't have to have everything go his way.
Yeah, he takes his racetrack with him, and I think that you make a great point there. Obviously, he broke his maiden at Churchill Downs, so we know he likes the track there. He's run well at Oaklawn Park and obviously at the fairgrounds. So for me, a horse that can take their track with them, that says a lot about their mental maturity as well. And when you talk about Kentucky Derby Day, especially Derby 150, there's a lot that has to go right from a mental perspective as well. So the ability to bring your track or bring your race with you, I should say, is a huge benefit to Catching Freedom. You've got great connections put together. Alba, Brad Cox, Flavie, and Pratt, they were all together last year with Angel of Empire, who went off and finished third. So you have the backing to make a great horse. And you know what I also feel like? A horse that is slowly progressing into their best form, which this horse is doing, especially from a numbers standpoint. Maybe we haven't seen his best yet. Maybe that's another feather in his cap that, unlike some other horses like a Fierceness, who has run a huge number, maybe Catching Freedom is slowly getting to his best. You want to peak on the first Saturday in May.
So, feet to the fire. Are you a Catching Freedom believer? Do you feel like maybe an underneath type, or are you thinking maybe Haskell Travers type down the road?
1000% underneath type. I think this is the type of horse that will be picking off horses late. And as I said before, he might be progressing to get to that best victory or best run, I should say. I don't know if it's going to be enough based off of his running style to win on the first Saturday in May.
Well, the most important question is, do we have our Derby and Oaks outfits ready for NBC?
No. Simple answer, no. Finding the Derby hats and Oaks hats are always difficult, but I've reached out to a lot of, incredible milliners. So let's hope that by Friday and Saturday, I'll have something put together.
Well, we'll let you go so you can take care of the important part. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much, JK.
Acacia, what's going on?
Hey, JK. Happy to be here with you. I haven't seen you in forever.
Soon enough. You're going to see too much of me. But yes, it's been some time. I feel like it's been a couple of months.
Yeah, I guess so. Because I think when you were in New York, I was down in Florida, so we missed each other.
Well, we'll be seeing more of each other. But before we get to that exciting news, let's talk a little bit about Domestic Product, who you've been able to see kind of grow up from a 2-year-old and then seeing him train down at Payson. From a development standpoint, what have you seen from Domestic Product?
Well, he's definitely a horse that's come along. I was not there the day of his Tampa Bay Derby win, but like you said, being based down at Payson Park, getting a chance to see him train, and actually right after his Tampa Bay Derby win, went by the barn. Chad Brown kind of pulled him out, him and Sierra Leone, and horses that were potentially on the Derby trail, and getting a chance to really kind of get a good look at them. And the first thing I said when he pulled out Domestic Product, and being up close, watching him train and then being up close to a horse is a different thing too. And the first thing I said was, wow, he really has filled out and grown up. And Chad said, yeah, he really has. He's a horse that maybe took a little bit of time to kind of come to hand. He was 5-1 as a Chad Brown first-time starter in his debut at Saratoga, which, as we know, is not necessarily typical, but turns out that he was actually in a very live debut race at Saratoga running behind Jess Steele. But I think he's improved as distances have come on. He has a bit of a tactical ability as well, and though the Tampa Bay Derby was kind of run like a turf race, I was impressed with the way that he finished that day, and I thought we saw something from him that we had yet to see.
Yeah, you mentioned that Tampa Bay Derby being run a little bit like a turf race. And I think what you mean by that is that, kind of a little bit slow early. They just kind of sprint for home. And I think that has some figure makers feeling as if the figure might be a little bit low because, we've talked about that before when it comes to Usain Bolt walking out of the gate and then sprinting home. He's never going to run as fast as time, and figures being built on that final figure. It does make sense that if it was slow early, it could have been slow. A little bit slow, a little bit light on the number. What did you think of his performance overall in that race? Were you wowed by that, or were you a little bit underwhelmed by his performance?
There have actually only been 2 horses that I've been wowed by onto the Derby trail, and that's Sierra Leone and Fierceness. And I think most people feel that way too. There's others that I think have potential and have some upside, but as far as saying, wow, and really being impressed. Those are the big two, and I think everybody knows that. As far as this horse, though, I actually was impressed with the performance because of the way that he finished. Yeah, it was slow. Yes, he sprinted home. Yes, he was second, kind of arguably running in place a little bit at the end in the Holy Bull. Fierceness didn't fire that day. We know Hades would go on to disappoint in his next couple of starts, but this is a horse that I think is improving. Now, what will he do stretching out to the 1.25 miles? That will be the question, but I like his running style. He is a horse, and I think that really benefited him in the Tampa Bay Derby too, that can kind of put himself in the right spot. You look at a horse like Sierra Leone, who has some gait antics and can really drop very far back early on in the race. As we've seen in the Kentucky Derby, typically that's not the running style that is the most successful. And I think with a horse like Domestic Product, him even being able to grab a share, putting yourself in the right spot, being forwardly placed, using tactical speed to your advantage. That was what I really took away from the Tampa Bay Derby, and that'll serve him well going into the Kentucky Derby.
Acacia, you obviously it's important when you're looking at these races. You want to look at these horses' physical. You want to look at their stamina and how it pertains to a horse that might or might not want to get 1.25 miles. Before I ask you for your final answer on what you think of Domestic Product in the Derby, what do you think about him from a stamina, physical standpoint?
Well, at first I wasn't quite sure because he's by Practical Joke, and Practical Joke is a horse that we found, they kind of like going the mile distance. But actually, I think Domestic Product is one that has benefited from stretching out at distances. His best races have come going longer. Broke his maiden going 1.125 miles, 2 turns at Aqueduct, one obviously the Tampa Bay Derby, ran well in the Holy Bull. So he has shown that he can handle 2 turns. And from a physical perspective, he is a leggy type of individual. The way that he's grown up, the way that he's filled out, he's shown that he can handle it. Obviously, the 1.25 miles is the question for everybody going into the Kentucky Derby. And with his pedigree, it doesn't scream that distance. But I think already he's overcome the odds. And I think you have to take it on a horse-by-horse basis. I really fell into the trap a couple years ago with Authentic and saying he's by Into Mischief. I don't think he wants any part of the 1.25 miles. And obviously, he showed us all wrong because he had a physical that said that he was able to handle the distance. So I think you have to keep an open mind about it.
All right, feet to the fire. Does Domestic Product win the Roses? Does he hit the Superfecta, or is he a down the line type for you?
I don't know if he's fast enough. He would not be a horse that I would take as a win candidate, but I do think he's one that's getting better at the right time, and hopefully he can use that tactical running style to put him in the right spot and maybe grab a share.
Acacia, go get those nails done. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Maggie, what's going on?
Hanging, JK. Got the day off. I like those days.
You never have days off. It's crazy.
No, when you're a mom, you don't. So, I gave the little one a phone and she's in her room. So,
well, thanks for joining us to talk a little bit about resilience. The first question I want to ask you is, what's the difference between the September 1st resilience that we saw that raced against Locked at Saratoga and the one we saw on April 16th that won? Did I say April 1st? I meant September 1st. April 6th that won in the Wood Memorial. What do you think?
The number one thing and the most, noticeable thing that I saw from him was the mental side of things. He was fairly green in that debut, and Mott and his team kind of knew that. They always show their hand a little bit when horses come in with that training saddle, and if they have a lot of things in their ears and stuff like that. And he did, and he was green, and he was screaming and hollering, and just wasn't as professional first time out as you like to see. And then I saw a completely different animal, going back to April here in the Wood Memorial, and he was focused. It seemed as though the blinkers, not only in the race, helped him focus and kind of settle in. They did so prior to. And furthermore, he's not your typical Into Mischief. He's more your kind of atypical Into Mischief in that he's incredibly athletic, like he tends to throw, but most of them are built kind of like, I like to say, sports cars, where I feel like their best performances often lie in the distances of a mile, just kind of either shade of that. He, on the other hand, is a classically built thoroughbred. He's athletic, but he's very well balanced and bigger. He kind of has that, Lincoln Town Car type of body rather than, you know, the Ferrari, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's the kind of physical you want for these classic distances.
So, Mags, what did you think about the way this horse ran in the Wood Memorial?
I think the blinkers ultimately did the trick, as I kind of alluded to, in that he was prominent throughout, which I think just in racing in general is the best kind of style to have. You're not going to be targeted as an out and out speed horse where you might get pressed along to go fast, especially in a race like the Derby, but you're handy enough. You get out of the gate well, you get that position going forward, and you're not left with traffic woes with horses and all kinds of obstacles getting in your way. And that's exactly what we saw in the Wood Memorial. And furthermore, John Velasquez and Bill Mott stating that he was a horse that got to his competition and wanted to hang on them. And it feels like with those blinkers on, he really sealed the deal. You know, he ran straight, true, and forward through the wire. And that's really the result that you want. And furthermore, he keeps elevating his performances and running faster with each subsequent race. They're not huge leaps, they're incremental, but that's how you develop a good horse, in my opinion.
Well, put your feet to the fire a little bit here, a couple of weeks out. What do you think of Resilience's chances in the Kentucky Derby?
Maybe the time isn't right for the Derby, right? Maybe he's just not quite as good as some of those horses like the Fierceness, like the Sierra Leones of this world yet. Do I think he has a shot, and definitely a shot to hit the board? Absolutely. I don't like him as a win candidate, but I am going to use him. That is
well, Maggie, there's no way we're going to let you go on vacation without telling us who you actually do like. You got to see a lot of these horses in the flesh. It's one of the good things about being in Saratoga in your position, seeing all the 2-year-olds. Who do you think is going to win the Kentucky Derby?
Sierra Leone. And I went on a rant about, I don't know about horses closing and too many things to get in their way, but I think they paid $2.3 million for him. And this is what I do. As you mentioned, I look at horses physically. You put him and Fierceness in front of me, and 101 times I'm going to pick, and 101 times out of 100, I'm picking Sierra Leone, hands down.
All right. Well, there it is. Maggie Wolfendale, we appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Michael, what's going on?
How you doing, JK?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've missed you. I feel like I haven't seen your face in a very long time.
Both busy people.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, so look, let's talk about this horse. We did an episode a couple of days ago where I picked him as one of my long shots that I think is a double-digit type horse that can get involved, and a lot of that has to do with my trust in you as a horse trainer. But also, I think there's something to be said about a horse with all of this kind of back turf pedigree and stamina. Are you going to be worried about endlessly at the 8th pole, or are you going to be worried about the 7/8 pole?
I would be worried about him just basically in general. As I had mentioned before, I've seen the horse work 30-something times on the dirt. They've been decent. None of them have really been eye-catching. You look through and through his pedigree, it's laden with turf, it's laden with stamina. It's no secret that sometimes turf horses do run well at Churchill Downs. However, I do not believe that the racetrack we're seeing at Churchill Downs now is akin to what you've seen in the past, Animal Kingdom and those types of things, Barbaro especially. The racetrack's not as tight and as fast as it used to be. Times changed, surfaces changed. So in the back of my mind, I can't tell you that, he's going to relish the surface. He's not going to like it. I can tell you that 1.25 miles will be no issue for him. I think we saw that the other day in the Jeff Ruby, where going 1.125 miles, he was actually running away from horses, synthetic, not a whole lot of kickback, very easy on horses. The first Saturday in May, there are lots of obstacles for not just endlessly, but the other 19 entrants. There's 150,000 people. There's the threat of an off racetrack and rain. There's my old Kentucky home. There's a new paddock. There's sounds, there's sights, there's things, 50, 60 feet above their head. These are all new things for everybody this year. But, my horses had 2 works over the racetrack there. I thought they're more or less like I've seen, decent without being eye-catching. We worked 5/8 last week in 1 minute and 4/5. His gallop out was just okay. That's kind of what I've seen all along. Now, how do I know this horse doesn't just show up on Derby Day and run a banger? I don't. I can't tell you that. After speaking with Mr. Ammerman, he had asked me to go ahead and keep an open mind. As you know, right after the Jeff Ruby, I was bullish on running in the American turf. After speaking with Mr. Ammerman and the different scenarios that he had laid out for me, I more than understand where he's coming from. So this is truly going to be a joint effort between the Ammermans and myself. We'll go ahead and work this weekend. Obviously, the draw is Saturday night, 1 week out from post time, which is a little new too. You usually have a couple of days after you work. But, right now all I can say is the horse is doing well and he's very healthy. And that is my biggest concern right now. There are 1,600 horses nominated to the Kentucky Derby every year. 20 of them line up on the starting gate. If you would have asked me 4 months ago if I thought this horse would have been, one of the leading point earners for the Kentucky Derby, I'd have thought you were crazy. The way things have worked out, he's gone ahead, won 2 races in impressive style on a synthetic surface, and here we are. Any other questions?
Well, I think the well, I got a couple. No, so I think that there's a couple things that to pick up from there is that I think of those 20 they're going to get in that starting gate, I would say that half of them don't want to go 1.25 miles. Now they'll all get 1.25 miles, just how fast they'll get the 1.25 miles. I think that that's definitely a positive that you have with Endlessly, is that you do know that part of the race. When they're tired, he'll be running. Now, how fast he's going to be running, I think, is the question on how he handles the surface. But you said it best. I mean, there's not just Animal Kingdom. There's Patio Prado. There's Dullahan. There's a lot of horses that were quote turf horses that ran well on the first Saturday in May. And I understand your point that the racetrack has changed a little bit. But I've seen you do some magic at Churchill Downs before. Little City of Light action. I've seen you do some things there.
True. We're awfully comfortable there at Churchill Downs. I was fortunate enough to be a part of, a great run of horses during my tenure with Todd Pletcher. I think 20-something horses we went over to the paddock with. Lucky enough to be there with Super Saver when he got the job done. Also unlucky enough to be there with horses like Eskendaria, likely post-time favorite. Uncle Mo, same thing, likely post-time favorite, and then them never getting to see the starting gate. So I've been fortunate enough to see both sides of it. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good on that day, and in a 20-horse field, it's going to take some luck. I always liken the Kentucky Derby to something like the Indy 500. It's blast off right from when the gates open, everybody's jockeying for position. The race obviously isn't won within the first 3/8 of a mile or first half mile there, but can easily be lost, everyone wanting to get good position going into the first turn and turning up the backside. So fortunate my horse does not need to be a part of the early fray. He does not need to be up close early. He places himself kindly behind horses, and whichever race we end up in on Saturday, whether it be dirt or turf, those are the tactics we'll apply.
Well, we'll be rooting for the navy blue, whether it's the Silks or the Ammermans or your saddle towels, the MWM. Michael, I appreciate your time.
Next up on the show, we welcome in a man I know from his exploits in the contest world. Love talking racing with him. Love the stuff he writes for us about Gulfstream Park over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. His name is Chris Cupples, and he's here today to talk about Dornoch. Dornoch is a horse that a lot of people were having very much at the top of the market a couple of races ago. The bloom a little bit off the rose now after the Bluegrass Stakes. But Chris, this is a horse that there is still some support for. Very curious to get your general thoughts on Dornoch and what level of contender he is in this year's Kentucky Derby.
If you're a Dornoch fan, you're probably not going to like me. If I'm building superfecta tickets, I don't want him nowhere near him. He was a little bit overhyped on debut, disappointed. They ran him in a maiden versus stakes company. He loses to a horse that ultimately turned out to have to go to the turf because he wasn't very good and noted. After that, he breaks his maiden at Keeneland. I believe 4 of 6 of those horses he beat. No, 6 of 8 of those horses he beat are still maidens today. The Remsen race was impressive, but he's on his left lead, on the rail, fought back. If he would have been outside, that would have been a different story, I think. I think the rail actually helped him that day. And the Sierra Leone he run into that day is not the same one he's seen in the Lexington. You can pause your video when they're side by side, the Remsen and the Lexington. Sierra Leone is 2 different horses. Dornoch was a early developed 2-year-old. He looked good. He worked out good. Ever since then, he's got lead issues. He has to be ridden hard to get the lead, to keep the lead. The only option I see, they're not getting the lead in Kentucky Derby. He's never won if he's not on the lead, besides when he passed Sierra Leone on the rail. He ain't got a chance.
All right, that's bold words, and there's some data behind what you're saying. I'll make the other case just to see if you buy any of these arguments. It's been discussed that this is a horse that runs to the level of his competition. It's also been discussed that they tried to experiment. The reason he didn't show so much speed in the Bluegrass was a deliberate rating experiment, and maybe he'll be better potentially adding blinkers and sending in the Derby. You've already let me know that you don't particularly buy any of those arguments, but I'd love to hear any counterpoints you have to them.
Well, you tried your experiment and it didn't work, and he's not fast enough to get the lead, so what's he going to do now? And if you do like him, I think you're going to take a cut in price because of the TV narrative y'all talked about on the Morning Line show. They're going to show the Remsen race on TV over and over and over. He beats the horse that's either favorite or second favorite in the Derby. Not to mention Mage's brother. They're going to harp on that. Well, Michael Jordan had 2 brothers.
It's a good point. It's a fair point about the sibling connection, but that is right for the uninitiated. And we have a lot of new people around here, Chris. He is the brother, Dornoch, to a Kentucky Derby winner. So you're going to hear a lot of that narrative, that idea that, perhaps this dam could have the winner 2 years in a row. That sort of more English-Irish way of looking at races form. Technically he has him on the form book, but I think you made the key point about that, where I think the idea that he outgamed him is a little bit overblown, because I think he was on the right part of the track. Sierra was probably on the wrong part of the track, and Sierra was coming off that long layoff. I think he also just, got tired late. That was a great day for Dornoch. Dornoch, I like him more than you do, but I still can't quite elevate him to that level of serious Kentucky Derby contender based on all of that.
Right. And if someone likes him, I don't want to talk him off their horse. The only positive to me is he's in the starting gate.
Chipping a chair, isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this race writ large for a minute before I let you get out of here, Chris. Who is it that you do like in this year's Kentucky Derby? You certainly have tipped your hand a little bit that maybe it's Sierra Leone.
I like Sierra Leone. He does have some holes. Lexington, he hung on his left lead, but there was nobody there, so he's pulling away. He's allowed to drift over to the rail, and he's got this funky motion about him. He has a turfy knee action, which it don't mean he can't run fast. He is fast, and I'm a sucker for a closer. But example, look at a video of Tapit Trice, who, yes, we know he ran bad, blah blah blah. But look at the way he moves, and look at the way Sierra Leone moves. Their actions are totally different. Their leg action.
Interesting. Yeah, you said Lexington. I assume you meant the
Bluegrass
coming down the lane there.
Bluegrass.
Well, who would be your top pick at this point?
If I had to pick at this point, it'd have to be Fierceness, and then he's, maybe I show up, maybe I don't. You're still going to have that in the back of your mind. I like a couple other horses. I like the Catalytic, I believe his name is.
That's a long shot in a big way.
I don't think he can win at all, but I think he can run underneath. The horse wants to run all day long. And Honor Marie.
Oh, I
I
agree. There's been,
agree with that.
including from me, a lot of love for as one to come running late.
But I'm not completely done with my work either, and I do not go as deep as I used to in the Derby. I have a lot more luck on the undercard, even though the Derby usually wraps up the contest. But I spend hours and hours and hours and hours before on Derbies, and you get mind that bird.
I'm glad you didn't say Rich Strike, because every time I hear the name, I recoil a little bit. Well, you know what? No good deed goes unpunished, Chris. Maybe we'll have you do some spot plays on the free side over at inthemoneypodcast.com as we get closer. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Been fun.
There's so many reasons I love having Brian Nadeau on these shows. Not only is he one of the sharpest handicappers around, great TV personality down there at Gulfstream Park, but I also get to bust out my Mets gear and have somebody who will appreciate it. Brian, very happy to have you here to talk about Grand Mo the First, a horse we did another video you can find elsewhere on our YouTube channel with a little bit of a pedigree wise guy case for this horse to get up there and hit the board. What do you think of Grand Mo the First as an individual?
Yeah, PTF, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me on. The pedigree, that's I think where if you're a Grand Mo the First guy or gal, that's kind of what you're looking at. I mean, because you look at the pedigree, he's by Uncle Mo, he's out of a Giants Causeway mare, it's all there, right? You would think a mile and a quarter, especially on the bottom of the pedigree, maybe that levels the playing field, because let's just be honest, he's slow. He's way too slow to win this race, but the Derby can be a funky race, and now we're talking about a mile and a quarter, and just maybe that helps level the playing field a little bit. Can he win? I would be blown away if he won. I would fall over. But with that being said, you look at his running line, Pete, in the Curlin, Florida Derby right here at Gulfstream Park, and he was a very distant third. And that's not out of the realm of possibility. You can run a distant third and still have a wildly successful day if this is your horse. I mean, he's got to be 50, 60, 70 to 1. I know that doesn't always happen in the Derby anymore, especially when Mind That Bird won. It took a little while for that to wear off, and now Rich Strike. So remember, everybody was like 20 to 1, even though they should have been, 200 to 1. But underneath, stranger things have happened, and he's one of, me personally, we'll talk about it. I think it's a 3-horse race, and certainly Grand Mo the First is not one of them, but anything can happen underneath, and he's got a running style. He seems to be progressing in his form. And Victor Barbosa Jr. is a sharp guy, too.
You make a really interesting point about what happens with the win market in the Derby. It does seem, we've seen horses catch money, not just because of narratives and things like that. We've seen them catch money because of their names. So that idea that in the win market, you might not have anybody over 50 to 1, that makes sense to me. But when you're talking about third and fourth in supers, I don't think that effect carries through. This is a horse that could legitimately be 50 to 1 when it comes to your thirds and fourths. So if you were going to play him, it sounds like you would be limiting him to those type of spots. After the quick break we're going to take here, I'm going to ask you who you like for the top of the ticket, but I did just want to confirm that you think he's a legit contender for those spots, and just get any other thoughts you have on him based on having seen him in the flesh or the body of his work.
Yeah, I think he could run again. That would probably be the ceiling for me, third. He would not be a horse I would completely draw a slash through. Let's say this is a horse that can't run in the money and blow things up. Because again, he might have a running style that could suit well, and he's got a pedigree. I think that could suit him well too. He's a reach, absolutely. But we've seen. I'm just coming like the Invisible Inks and horses like that at 55 to 1 or whatever the heck he was that one year. I'm really stretching my memory here, but those kind of horses that are a little implausible, but the flow hits them between the eyes. The pedigree works. There's a lot of drunk soldiers in the lane that can't see out the mile and a quarter. And maybe he runs on and picks up some pieces and everybody says, oh man, I like the winner so much, but I couldn't get that horse. And then that's how things blow way up.
Let's talk about the top of your tickets, Brian, that might have Grand Mo the First in there underneath. You mentioned it as a 3-horse race. Is it sort of the obvious 3 horses? Who is it you think is going to be able to get the job done this year?
Well, clearly Fierceness is the horse to beat. He can't lose if he runs his Curlin, Florida Derby. That's a statement of fact. I wouldn't trust him. I'm not going to pick him. He's legitimately probably, I would think he's going to be 9 to 5 or 2 to 1 in the race. But, he won't lose. It's as simple as that. But that we're gambling here. That's not very sexy, and nobody wants to do that. Pick that kind of horse on top. Sierra Leone, it's tough to knock him too much. He's got a Zandon 2.0 to me, but he's the other horse. But the horse I really like a lot, Pete, that I don't really get why he's not really being talked about. I thought just a touch ran as good, if not better, than Sierra Leone. In the bluegrass, he was chasing. I don't know why. Please don't do that in the Derby. I don't know why he was chasing a rabbit in the race. It was his first start on a fast track. It was his first start at 2 turns. And, it took a phenomenal performance by Sierra Leone to run him down. And he was well clear of everybody else. He has a running style. I think of that kind of real quiet, like running style, that, that slingshot on the far turn kind of style. And I have to hope Fierceness has a bad day, which he's had twice out of 5 starts, terribly bad days. And, Sierra Leone's great. I don't want to knock him at all. But when you have to pass arguably 17 to 19 horses, no thanks. I don't want anything to do with that kind of horse and that kind of a running style. So I like just to touch a lot. And it's, again, Pete, it's a price thing too. He's going to be, 8 to 10 to 12 to 1 in the race. And the other 2 horses we're talking about are probably 9 to 5 and 3 to 1.
Last question, Fierceness. You've had the chance to see him in person multiple times. Does he have a tell pre-race? Have you seen anything being around him that suggests whether you're going to get the Jekyll or the Hyde, as it were?
No, that's the weird thing about him too. And I almost think Todd Pletcher would probably tell you this too. He's like the world's greatest workhorse too. Just yesterday, Friday, he worked phenomenally well. And he did that before the Holy Bull when he just ran a stinker. And I'm probably sure he did that before the Champagne when he stunk as well. So that's the frustrating thing. He's not twisting Oreos, and you can figure it out, at the table here. I don't know, Pete. I wish I had something. The Derby with 75,000 people or whatever, you got to watch them on TV, and if maybe they blow up in the post parade. But Holy Bull Day, we have a heck of a day here at Gulfstream Park, and there's a lot of people here. But that was nothing like that. And certainly on Carolyn, Florida Derby Day, he was a model citizen, and you saw what happened. So. That's the other frustrating thing about the horse. I don't really feel like on the surface there's anything that he gives away that says I'm not gonna play today. So, that's another part of the thing. And at 9 to 5, 2 to 1, is that what you want to go to the window with?
Brian making the Johnny KGB reference here on the In the Money Airways. Massive props for that one. In the workout, we're recording this way early. People are going to be watching all the way through to the Derby. That was the April 19th work. We're going to be covering works. We're going to have information out there on this YouTube channel you can check out. Make sure that you subscribe, click that notifications bell. Never miss an episode, as it were. Brian, thanks so much for your time.
You got it, buddy. Always good to catch up, and we'll talk soon. Hopefully over some Mets victories.
There you go.
Pleasantly surprising.
PTF back with you for our friends at Free Reign Coffee. Moving on in our little mini pods. Very excited to talk about a horse called T.O. Password with our resident Japanese expert. Actually, one of our resident Japanese experts we speak with from time to time on these airwaves. He is Toshi Onikubo. Toshi, how are things?
Everything good, Pete. Thanks for inviting me for this. It's always my pleasure to be on.
Well, there's been so many words written about so many of these horses in the Kentucky Derby. T.O. Password, I think we can safely say, is the most unknown of any of the runners to the wider American audience. Let's start out by you just giving us an overview of his form. What has he done? Where has he come from?
Yeah, T.O. Password is unbeaten 2 from 2. Of course, qualified for the road to the Kentucky Derby for Japan. And he's sired by Copano Ricky, but has never had a JRA graded stakes winner. And out of mare called Tail Rachel. Herself was a JRA 3 times winner. However, she has never produced a JRA winner before T.O. Password is coming. So pedigree is pretty right, I'd say. His race record is, seems perfect anyway. But when you watch the races, replays, I think it's going to be a big ask for him. he tend to go in front. And second time out in the Fukuryu Stakes when he qualified for the Kentucky Derby, he read the race. I mean, still, a little bit too keen, I would say. But I'm not sure he can run in the same way at the Churchill Downs, first week of May. So it's a big ask for Teo Password, I'd say.
How would you describe the company he's been facing? We've got the tape to show of that stakes win where he punched his ticket to the Derby. What's he facing here?
I mean, it's a big ask for him again. And, the form doesn't really, justify himself to become, one of the best dart horse in the 3 years old in his generation. Yeah, again, 2 from 2, unbeaten, sounds great. But the reality is he is not the top tier. But the interesting thing, we need to think about is they brought his company horse, Teo Sandoni. So, I mean, that's actually quite interesting. Teo Sandoni, 5 years old, only 2 times JRA winner, but it's the same owner and same trainer. Breeder is different, but both from Hidaka area, kind of medium to family size farm, based on Hidaka area in Japan. Yeah, I think it's interesting challenge. They brought 2 horses to the Churchill Downs.
Do you think the stablemate is he there just to work with Teo Passport in the morning, or will he find a spot somewhere himself?
As far as I know, he is running in Arishiba Stakes Grade 2 on Friday. Wow. Yeah, that's
interesting.
Yeah, what I heard.
It's safe to say that a more serious Japanese contender would take the route like Forever Young did, like Derma Sodagake did through the Middle East, as opposed to staying in Japan and trying to come over for this?
I mean, that's a good question, Pete. I mean, I think it's hard to say how serious, but of course, considering they're taking the other horse with him is, I think shows their seriousness. I mean, to be honest, traveling to Saudi, Dubai, and then Churchill from Japan, it's quite difficult. Traveling different countries, and then 2 races in the international stages, then going to Churchill from the Middle East. I think it's definitely a barrier to overcome for those horses. I mean, the question would be which one has class? Yeah, probably those who travel internationally. But I mean, unbeaten in Japan is it's still showing his ability. I mean, yeah, seriousness. Yeah, I think they're serious, but I mean the form doesn't really transfer to the other Kentucky Derby prep races or trial races in America.
Talented horse, but probably on the outside looking in as far as the Derby goes. Toshi, we're going to have you part of a lot of other coverage, including another YouTube video where we dive deeper into not just Teo Password, but also Forever Young. But want to thank you for popping on here for the Monster Pod today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Pete.
Next up on the show, a familiar guest for In the Money Media and In the Money Plus and Redboard Rewind. You see him a lot on the In the Money Media Network. You also see him a lot in winner's circles and on contest leaderboards, including his recent big hit at the Grade 1 Gamble at Keeneland from 10 Strike Racing. He's Clay Sanders. Clay, you're riding high, my man.
Yeah, it was a fun weekend at Keeneland last week, and hope to keep it rolling.
Well, the last time you were on our airwaves with me talking about races that were yet to happen was for Arkansas Derby Day, and you made a pretty nice case that Just Steel was a live item to hit the board. He ran second at 30-odd to 1. He's going to be coming back in the Kentucky Derby. Was last time the time, or is this a horse you still have some interest in?
Well, I mean, I think last time was the time because we were getting 30 to 1 in a field that he made a lot of sense in. I hit that trifecta. I wasn't a big fan of Muth in that race and was wrong, but I was at least smart enough to include on top. He was against his last 2 races at Oaklawn. In the last race, in the Rebel, he was in a parking lot. And you can't win at Oaklawn if you're 5 wide on the first turn. The race before, the inside was that really big inside rail. He ran second to Mystik Dan. Was a good race. you know how the coach is. He keeps bringing him along slowly but surely. They dance every dance. Will be his 11th start of his career. Some of these horses will be their third or fourth start. You know, he's got some seasoning. He's a justified. The distance should be fine. I think he's got a live shot at, in Europe, he's what, 40-1? I mean, I think he can. I think he can get it done.
I've heard other Sharpies besides you make this case. And Nick Tamaro, when he did his estimated morning line, that's a video you can find elsewhere here on the In the Money YouTube channel, thought he could be as short as 20, but probably would be more like 30. You'd be interested at those odds, though, still?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to cut in line to bet him at 20-1, but he'll be on tickets. If you cover up Fierceness in this race, the rest of these are all pretty slow horses. So his, what was he, 98 last race? Or no, excuse me, 96-ish. I think he fits it. I think he fits in here. And look, if you covered up Muth in the Arkansas Derby, or, if he couldn't get in, if Arkansas had the same rules as the Kentucky Derby, he'd be coming in off a Arkansas Derby win where he won by 4.5 over another horse in the race, Mystik Dan. What's wrong with that resume compared to a lot of these others?
I want to go back to that idea of his seasoning. 20 horse test, big crazy circumstances there under the Twin Spires. Could that be a sneaky advantage that he has, that he's not one of these unexposed, barely been out of the barn types? I mean, this guy's been around the block.
No, certainly. I think that seasoning matters in a race like the Derby. He's used to big crowds. He's used to big fields, bumping around. The only concern I would have is this is a horse that's been 4 wide, 5 wide his last 3 starts. You can't do that in this 20-horse field and expect to win. Maybe you can get a check, but some of that might be circumstances. He's had some outside posts. I'd be interested if he could, draw a little bit more inside, tuck in a little bit. But, I think it makes sense. The seasoning will help.
We've got a lot of new people who watch these YouTube videos who might honestly not even really be that familiar with D. Wayne Lukas, one of the legends of the sport. What would it mean in terms of Lukas getting back to the winner's circle at the sport's biggest stage? Are we talking about a Nicholas winning the Masters in the 90s, Tiger Woods from a couple of years ago? I mean, what would it mean as a sports story if Lukas were to pull this off?
I think your golf analogy makes sense if it, Nicholas or Arnie coming winning at 40 or 45. I think that is a good comparison. It would be a great narrative. I mean, obviously we don't have Baffert in this Derby, so having Lukas win this race. How old is he? 90 or 86? I think that would mean. Yeah, I think that would mean a lot. And think about this narrative. You might not have thought about this. What odds would you have had that Steve Asmussen's son Keith would get a Derby before Steve would? I mean, the way he was riding a year ago, I would have bet my life that wouldn't happen. But, he's improved quite a bit. And, he's not a good finisher, but I think he's the smartest jockey in the country and the best judge of pace. So that's an advantage right there.
It's a great point. The irony, too, of Keith having this Derby mount with somebody other than his dad for the first one is just wild. So the key question, and we'll leave it with this one. What's the ceiling for Just Steel? How will you be using him in your wagers on Derby Day?
I think the main bets I will key him under in the 3rd and 4th slots in your super and try. I'll sprinkle some win and a little money, maybe in the picks as call it a C. But I don't think it's without a chance. But I'm not going to, he's not a key on top for me. But I think he has a good shot of hitting the board at a nice price.
Not one to sleep on. And then there's also the fact that there's going to be all these other narratives that come out between when we're recording and now. If they don't have to do with him, he could be one who drifts. So I do think this story is going to get some traction and that you might see something in the 20s. But still sounds like that's quite usable for you. Clay, thank you so much for your time. We'll have you back very soon.
Sounds great, Pete. Good luck to everyone.
PTF back with you. Very happy to welcome back to the In the Money airwaves an always popular guest, a man whose words you've read. He's attended a handful of derbies. I'm just going to say a handful of derbies in person. He's got something fun and new cooking this year. We'll ask him about that. We're also here to ask him about Stronghold. He is Hall of Famer Jay Privman. Jay, how are things?
Pete, I'm doing well. It's always good to be with you.
Let's start off by talking about what you've got cooking for the Derby this year. After having been to a few in a row, you got something new and interesting happening. Tell us about that.
I attended 39 over the course of my career, the last one being in 2022. And then, as you know, I retired from the racing form a few months later. Last year laid low, but everybody's told me that if you're not going to be at Churchill Downs, the second best place to be for the Derby is Las Vegas. So I'm gonna test that theory this year. I got invited to be on a night before the Derby seminar at the Rampart Casino, which is part of the JW Marriott in the suburb of Summerlin. So I'm going to take it in Vegas for the first time.
Oh, that sounds like a ton of fun. If you're out there in Vegas, check it out and see if you can get on that, what I'm sure will be a prestigious guest list to check that out. I've never done a Vegas Derby, thought about it, and just never made it happen. And now I'm in this groove of going every year, and I'm not complaining about that either. Let's get to the meat and the sandwich here, Jay. We want to talk about Stronghold, a horse that wasn't really on my radar, I'll be honest with you, before the Santa Anita Derby, despite the fact that this is a horse that had some decent form in the book before that. Is he a serious contender for the race? What do you think of Stronghold and his chances going forward?
So I don't know that he's a win candidate, Pete, but I think he's a horse that people should take a little bit seriously if they're playing the gimmicks, because I do think he has a bit of upside. I think he's been very cleverly managed this year. He had 4 starts as a 2-year-old. All of his races around 2 turns have been quite good, and he got a nice little break over the winter. And I thought it was really shrewd of them to go to Sunland and to give him a nice, easy start to his 3-year-old campaign with a win there in the Sunland Derby prior to the Santa Anita Derby. And I thought he showed a lot of grit in the Santa Anita Derby to win that race. The fig of that race, I think, might be a little light. I think he might be a little bit better than what that race gave him credit for. I think he's improved a little bit more over the winter than maybe the figs might show. And the couple of things that I like about him, Pete, he breaks well to put himself into good position, which is, I think, something that is usually good in these big Derby fields. He finishes his races off well. And he's got good connections. The jockey, Antonio Frezu, is really impressed since coming to California and being positioned out here and making this his home. And Phil D'Amato is obviously one of the best trainers in Southern California. So I think this horse has legitimately good connections. I think he's on the improve, and I think he will run better figs-wise than he ever has in the Kentucky Derby, because I think he's a progressive, improving kind of horse.
I'd love to drill down on the figure from Santa Anita Derby Day. You've spent a lot of time making figures yourself. Is there a specific reason why you think that figure might be low? Is there a split variant or something along those lines?
No, it's just that I think that Imagination had run a couple of races in the low to mid 90s, and usually at this time of year, horses are improving. And there were a number of horses in the race who ran poorly off of better figs previously, McVeigh. So I think being one of the more notable ones among that. And I think the fig ended up being a tougher one to make. And I'm a little more sympathetic to these horses improving at this time of year. And I don't know that Imagination regressed as much as the figs might show. I think that, in fact, Stronghold has improved. I don't know that his fig in the Santa Anita Derby, it shows it as being equal to the Sunland Derby. I think it might have been a little bit better than that. And I think there's another forward move in him come Kentucky Derby Day.
What do you see his ceiling as?
In terms of figs, or in terms of where he finishes the race?
Where he finishes in the Derby is probably an easier way to frame the question.
Yeah, I don't know that he's a win candidate, Pete. There's several other horses I like better than that, but I think he's a legitimately good horse who I absolutely will be using in the gimmicks. I certainly would have to use him in the try or the super. I think he's a horse who absolutely can at least be at that level come Derby Day.
What I really like about your case, Jay, is you're giving us reasons why he's better than the bare form suggests. That's when you find prices, and they can be very valuable on Derby Day, even if we're talking about those 3rd and 4th spots.
You know, and one other thing, Pete, just to bring up that people might forget about until they look at his past performances. He began his career in Kentucky. D'Amato had a string there last year, and in fact, his maiden win came at Churchill Downs. So he's the rare California shipper who already has a good performance over Churchill Downs.
Given the time you've spent on the Triple Crown Trail, Jay, I would be accused of host fail if I didn't ask you for at least a few sentences, macro level, about this race. Who has impressed you the most? Are the favorites the right ones heading into this year's Derby?
I think the top two are both legitimately good horses, that being Fierceness and Sierra Leone, but they both have things that I think you could knock. To me, Fierceness is a bigger knock because obviously, at least to this point in his career, he needs things his own way in terms of pace and in terms of the way a race unfolds. And if he gets that on Derby Day, he's going to be very tough to beat because his best races are better than anything else in this field. But when he doesn't get his own way, he doesn't perform quite as well. And so I think, we're recording this a little more than 2 weeks before the race. So we don't know yet the final field. We don't know where Fierceness is drawn. We don't know specifically what the pace is going to look like. And I think in the case of Fierceness, the draw is going to be really important because if he were hypothetically to draw inside and then not break, he's going to be in big, big trouble. And so if he gets an outside draw and he can get into that comfortable rhythm that he got into in the Florida Derby or in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he's going to run his race and he's going to be tough to beat. But there are some things about him that give me pause. As for Sierra Leone, I really like the way he finished off the Bluegrass. I mean, as we've all seen, the track at Keeneland has largely favored horses that are prominent throughout this meet, and he came from well back. He wants every part of a 1.25 miles. He's fired every time. To me, going in, he's the horse to beat among the top two. I like him a little bit more than Fierceness.
The way you've talked about that, though, I sense you've got something to pull in at least a little bit more of a price. Doesn't sound like you want to hitch your wagon to either of those stars necessarily from a wagering point of view.
Yeah, the horse that intrigues me is the horse who ran second to Sierra Leone in the Bluegrass, and that's Just a Touch. He was only making his third lifetime start. It was his first race around 2 turns, and of all the horses that were prominent early, he hung in there best. And I think the price disparity that you're going to get between Sierra Leone and Just a Touch is going to be pretty pronounced on Derby Day for horses that ran 1-2 out of what I think was the best of the preps so far. So, depending on where he lands, I'd want to get maybe in the at least 10-1 range on this horse. And if I did, to me, that would be a bet with value on Just a Touch. But I will definitely be using Sierra Leone as well. And as I was mentioning regarding Stronghold, if the try comes back with those two and Stronghold running third, I'll do pretty well.
He'll be a very happy man out there in Las Vegas. That's what I'm
exactly.
Great stuff, Jay. Appreciate you as always. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate you having me on.
Very pleased to welcome back to the In the Money airwaves a man whose work you've been reading over at inthemoneypodcast.com. And he's going to be part of a new show we're cooking up with Breeders' Cup. You'll be hearing about that in due time. What you're going to hear about today is an under-the-radar horse in this year's Kentucky Derby called West Saratoga. And to tell us about him, we have Jackson Muniz. Jackson, how are things?
I'm doing good, Pete. Happy to be here.
Let's talk about this horse and where he came from. First and foremost, for the uninitiated, who is West Saratoga?
Yeah, so West Saratoga last year, he was more of a one-turn horse. He did have a grade 6 win at Churchill Downs last year, which is a positive for him. He has a win over the surface, which not a lot of horses in this year's field can say that. This year, he's had an okay Derby prep season. He ran fine in some 7 furlong prep. They stretched him out into the Sam F. Davis, where he ran okay. He was up close to the pace, which was pretty fast that day, but he was no match for Not This Time. He kind of faded. He faded to third. He was beaten 6 lengths, I think it was. Last time out in the Jeff Ruby, he needed to improve that day. He did improve to his credit, and I thought he ran a lot better than the form line might suggest. He was wide on both turns. The pace was fast, and he was close to it throughout. He was the first one to make a move that day, and the pace completely collapsed. And everyone that was forward early was finished in the back half of the field. Everyone that was in the back half of the field, finished in the front. So I do want to give him bonus points for that race. I think it's better than it looks. I think he got a 110 time form US figure, which is not great, but it's not quite as bad as the 85 buyer might indicate. I think the time form's usually a little more accurate in the synthetic races. My biggest issue with that race is the form hasn't been great. The run backs haven't been good. Lucky Jeremy did no running in the Lexington. Seize the Gray did no running in the Bluegrass. And Woodcourt was favored yesterday in the Illinois Derby, and he was well beaten. So even though the Jeff Ruby has weirdly been a strong prep race the last couple of years, I'm not quite sure if this year's edition is going to be as good.
Good points all. And that trip angle you mentioned, that's always one I like to highlight because I think it can be very, very productive. When you're the horse that makes the move in the race that falls apart, the great Andy Beyer called it the MIHP, or the move into the hot pace, that can really be something that you can bet those horses back in certain spots. Of course, when you're moving up in class like this and switching surface out of a race that hasn't produced good form, maybe less so. But there are a couple elements of this horse I did want to pause on. One is the fact, as you said, horse for course angle. That's something that can yield dividends. The other is the experience this horse has with 10 runs. Do you think that might be to his benefit in a challenge like this?
Of course. I mean, if you have comparing him to a horse like, Just a Touch, who's making only his fourth start, I'd be much more confident in West Saratoga's ability to overcome some, any adversity, which it's the Derby. They're going to have some trouble at some point. It's just going to happen. My biggest issue is I don't think he wants any part of Mile Quarter. Just watching his races, he's exactly what I look for in a horse that's cutting back. He's making a move into the fast pace, going wide. If he's running the Pat Day Mile, I'd be very interested in betting him. But obviously, I don't blame him at all for running in the Derby. I would do the exact same thing. But maybe look for him down the line in a race like the Amsterdam or the Allen Jerkins this summer at Saratoga.
You've tipped your hand to the next question, which is he any kind of serious contender? Will he be on any of your tickets on the first Saturday in May if he runs in this race?
Yeah. I might, if I play some supers, I might have him in the fourth spot. I do think he's tactical enough to maybe work out the right trip. If he can maybe get the Mandolin trip, or just get the pocket trip and save every inch of ground and hope for the best in the stretch. But I just don't see him as a win contender in this year's Derby.
Let's take a minute while we have you, Jackson, and ask about the field as a whole. Horses like this, who you can kind of make a case for, squint if you see it. Some years they're much more appealing than others, probably depending on how much you respect those at the top of the market. What do you think we're going to see from Fierceness and Sierra Leone? Will the winner come from that group of two, or can we cast a wider net?
I'm a lot higher on Fierceness than I am on Sierra Leone. I'm not a huge Sierra Leone guy. He's gonna be, if he's the same price as Fierceness, he's gonna be 15th, 18th, 20th early. Like, he's gonna have so much trouble. Or he could possibly have a lot of traffic trouble. I don't see how they can be the same price in this race. I'm gonna be tossing Sierra Leone completely and using Fierceness on top and hoping to get some bombers underneath. Probably Honor Marie, maybe a little bit Mystik Dan. Catching Freedom's not going to be a huge price, but those are probably the three I'm interested in for underneath of Fierceness on top.
Jackson, really appreciate you coming on, giving your thoughts on West Saratoga. Maybe not so much for the Derby, but they probably are going to run there. You got to figure he's got the points. But boy, maybe down the line as a cutback, one to put in your horse tracker. If you are tracking our content for the Kentucky Derby, want to make sure that you subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell. We've got so many videos coming down the pike. We don't want you to miss any of them. And Jackson, we'll be back bugging you again. I'd like to say maybe even offering an opportunity. We are having this tie-in with the Preakness Future Wager. And as a thank you for participating in the videos, when the field is drawn for the Preakness Future Wager, I'll reach out to you and we'll make a bet on your behalf. So start thinking not just about the first Saturday in May, but the third Saturday in May in this Preakness Future video. And we'll be back at you real soon, my friend.
Sounds good, Pete. Thanks.
Next up on the show, very happy to welcome back a frequent guest. You know her from the work she's done on these airwaves, the work she's done in this business on the PR side over the years, and from the work she does behind the microphone at Parks, where one of the horses she had the pleasure, I'm going to say, of calling a few times, is now has a chance to get into this year's Kentucky Derby on the AE list as of this writing. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Uncle Heavy in the gates. Welcome back, Jessica Paquette. Jessica, what is that like, having a horse that you called quite possibly running in America's most famous race?
It's so exciting in ways that I never really expected. So one of the things at Parks is I get to call a lot of really nice horses, but they are often horses who maybe their stakes days are behind them, or on a big day like Pennsylvania Derby Day, which is a lot of fun and incredible. But I mean, I love these hard knocking warhorse types, but very rarely do I get to call a really nice horse at the start of their career and then get to watch them go and do. And that's been really fun. Horses like Uncle Heavy and Aoife's Magic, who I also think still has a graded stakes win in her I Will Die on That Hill. But Uncle Heavy was a cool horse because he always sort of showed what he could be. This first time I saw him, I believe I said on air, there's no way this horse is a sprinter. How is he sprinting? There's no way. He is built like a horse that wants to go a distance of ground. He has certainly shown that as he's grown into himself and the races have gotten longer, he's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, his Withers was a very, very nice run in the mud, going the 9 furlongs at Aqueduct. And this is a horse that I feel like, even when it hasn't gone his way in races, has excuses, whether it was difficult trips or wrong part of the track. At what point, or was there a point early in his career where you thought this would be a horse that might have the upside of being a Kentucky Derby starter?
I'll be perfectly honest. No, I wasn't thinking that. I wasn't thinking that big and that broad. But his last win here at Parks against State Bread Company, that was a really good race from him. And that was when he started to hint that he might actually be the real deal.
Obviously, things did not go his way in the Wood Memorial with that 5th place finish. But I mean, is this a horse who, based on the best bits of form you could see, having an impact in a race like this? You can be honest.
I think he really could. For me, if this horse gets into the Kentucky Derby, he's on every single ticket I use. Maybe he's not good enough to win. He is absolutely 1000% good enough to get into the exotics. And the way he just shows up every time, that 5th place in the Wood Memorial, that really, all things considered, wasn't that bad. That was the kind of race. I mean, it was a very scary race with deposition falling in mid-stretch. And I think Michael Sanchez got a little shaken up by that. And I don't blame him. That was horrifying. I can't imagine, as someone who rides horses, kind of being in the thick of things when something like that happens and then having to react and then go on with the race accordingly. Well, you're looking back to someone I mean, he rides with Dexter Haddock in the room and not knowing what had happened. I think 5th place in the Wood, fine. I hope he gets into the Kentucky Derby off of that.
That's a good point about him really not being persisted with in this spot. You go back to the gameness he showed in the lane in the Withers, again, going that longer distance. I would assume this is one you're expecting they would use hold-up tactics this time. Maybe he gets a run through, can use some of that physicality you were describing to come and get a little piece. So would you be limiting his use to underneath, or do you think you'd even have a penny with this horse on top? You would seem to be implying.
I'm bold. I'll put him on top too. I mean, I'm bold and I'm sentimental. So let's put those two things together. Yes, I will absolutely use him on top if he gets into the Kentucky 1000%. But I do think he's a big physical sort of colt. And he did, I think, miss a little bit of training going into the Wood. He had to quarantine on the farm when it was a herpes scare. There was some quarantine issue. So he didn't really have anything go his way heading towards the Wood or then in the Wood. So I think now kind of all systems are go. And don't discount a smaller outfit. Like Butch Reed's the big fish in our pond here, but I know nationally, kind of a small fish in the big pond. He can train a top quality racehorse for sure.
That was going to be my next question for you, were about these connections who people might not know so much about nationally. What do you want the world to know about Butch Reed and Michael Sanchez?
So I walk through Butch Reed's barn and I feel like I'm in any grade 1 kind of barn anywhere in the country. He runs a terrific operation. His horses always look great. He is ambitious where he runs them for sure. He's not afraid of taking a swing in a big race, and it's paid off on more than one occasion. I think there's more than a handful of people in this country that can train a racehorse. And often some of those great trainers are right in your backyard at some of these smaller tracks and just need the right horse to show it.
What about Sanchez? Do you think he's up for a test like this?
I think for a younger rider riding in the Kentucky Derby for the first time, that's a big ask there. It's a big emotional moment for them. He is as good of a rider as anyone. I think, from a technical standpoint, I think he'll have to certainly bring all the focus that he has.
And we'll see. I guess it's not official. Obviously, he's not officially in the race if they keep him in this spot. So we'll see what happens in terms of who ends up in the irons. But Sanchez has ridden him in each of the starts, and obviously has that relationship from back at home where you come to us from at Parks. We'll see what ends up happening there. let me get a sentence from you or two about the race as a whole. I mean, is this one that the market has right, do you think, with its fierceness in Sierra Leone and everybody else? Or is it, and I'm guessing you might say yes to this question, is a little bit more open than that?
I think there's the chance that it's a little bit more open. Fierceness, I'm a little suspect of. To me, he's a horse that needs everything his own way. And first Saturday in May, you really, with 19 of your friends in the field, it's unlikely you're going to get everything your own way. A lot can happen in the Kentucky Derby. That's why it is the most special race of the year. And Sierra Leone certainly looks like the real deal, for sure. Maybe he wins for fun, but I think this might be an interesting race. You could get some hidden value on some other horses.
Jessica, thank you so much for your time today. We'll continue to enjoy your work, and we'll have you back for another longer appearance very soon.
Good luck, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Sarah, the important question is, did you have Society Man in the Wood Memorial?
Obviously not. That would be nice, but unfortunately I did not. I do know someone that used him in a bunch of exactas though, but not with the eventual winner of that race, Resilience, and that just has to be such a slap in the face considering the odds that he went off at and how well he did run in that race.
Well, it came out of nowhere. I mean, looking at his past performances, he had the big setup win in the slop at Aqueduct, but he didn't get an overly fast number, and he was kind of bet that day anyways. Then he shows up at 106 to 1, almost 107 to 1, and gets second in the Grade 2 Wood Memorial.
Right. And I think that, look, when you're looking at these Derby contenders and you want that profile of who could possibly be a real contender in this race, you do want those horses that are peaking at the right time. And I will say, at least to his credit, he is moving forward at the right time to possibly set him up for a big performance coming up. I don't think he's quite good enough. I think that his Wood Memorial was a nice race from him. I think that he could be a decent horse. I think that there have really always been some sort of expectations with him, entering him in the Withers before he had even broken his maiden. But at the same time, I don't think that you can necessarily throw him into this mix as a serious contender, given what we've seen from some of the more accomplished rivals that he's going to have to face.
Mind That Bird, Giacomo, Rich Strike, they've kind of prevented horses from being outrageous numbers. I feel like this horse has to be over 100 to 1. He was 106 to 1 in the prep. I feel like he's probably going to be I would think he's going to probably be one of the longest shots on the board. I guess maybe there's a couple of others, but he feels like he's definitely going to be in contention.
I think so. I think you have to think about what his new connections might be interested in investing in their wagers, since I know that he was also privately purchased by a certain group to be able to get this experience to go into the Kentucky Derby. But I will say, at least of the two Danny Gargan trainees coming into this race at a much, much better price, I'd rather throw him underneath on some exotics than Dornoch. I'd be looking to see what he can do in comparison to a horse that I think is not peaking at the right time. I think he's actually kind of tailing off.
Yeah, I've never was a huge Dornoch guy. I mean, obviously his pedigree is very intriguing and interesting when you're talking about the first Saturday in May, but I was not impressed with his race in Florida, and then his comeback race, which wasn't great either. I think you make a great point. Comparative to their prices, I see what you're saying in terms of Society Man. Is this a horse that you'll be using it all underneath, or are you just saying in theory he's a horse that you could use potentially underneath?
Yeah, I mean, in comparison to his uncoupled stablemate, yes. But in reality, probably not. I don't think much of his chances coming into the Derby. I think that if he is anywhere in those exotics, he would be a surprise to me and many other people as well. I think his odds will reflect that. Cool horse that's really, done better than expected in his last race for sure. But certainly one that I feel I would need to see a little bit more from against some of the top contenders in this year's Derby, at least throughout the prep races, to really be taking his chances seriously going forward.
Well, Sarah, while I've got you here, I mean, I don't want to just keep going in circles about 100 to 1 shot, but we do want to talk about every horse that should be in the gate. Who are you excited about in this Kentucky Derby? Obviously, we got to see the draw. We have to see a couple more rounds of works. But what horses are you gravitating towards for this running of the Kentucky Derby?
I think as of right now, the horse that I'm looking at the most to be a square enough price and to possibly be getting better at the right time is actually Catching Freedom for the Brad Cox barn, a horse that I think will have a little bit more of a tactical running style than a horse like Sierra Leone, who we've seen be that deep closer and has shown that he can at least overcome something a little bit more than Fierceness has in his starts where things haven't totally gone his way. So I think that looking outside
who I suspect will be the two favorites, he could be that horse that I think has an opportunity to win this race that isn't going to be as short of a price as those two are.
Very interesting that you mentioned this horse, because I actually had Brad Cox on to talk about Encino, but we also talked about his other two horses, and I'm going to make people go listen to it. There's another YouTube video you can find where he's talking about this horse, but he gives a really good excuse for why Catching Freedom broke so slowly and why he doesn't feel like he'll break so slowly next time. And to your point, if he is more tactical and he is in front of Sierra Leone, he's a horse with a big kick, and I think if he can find himself a little bit more forward, he absolutely has a legitimate chance in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think just where everybody's going to be positioned and just showing that they've been able to deal with some things that aren't totally going to go their way in races in the past and still run their race. I think those are some of the attributes that you really look for when you think about horses that are going to be successful in a 20-horse field.
Sarah, we appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Next up on the show, a man who we are going to be talking with a lot as we get closer to this year's Kentucky Derby, checking in with him from the grounds, where he is going to be a key part of this year's Churchill Downs broadcast team. He's also somebody you've heard on these airwaves over the years, and not just because of that one time he punched his ticket to the NHC by playing all the fours. He is our good friend, Kevin Kilroy. What's going on, Kevin?
PTF, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I've been envious because Spencer Luginbuhl's had you on Redboard Rewind a bunch. We've had you on a little bit talking about stuff from New Orleans, but it's good to have you back here. It looks like you are under the Twin Spires quite literally at the moment. What are the vibes Derby week so far?
Yeah, it's starting to cook up. But it's so fun. I've been here doing the notes the past couple of years, but first time being in the building and doing all the workout shows and the analyst seats. So it's neat, man. The vibes are good. It's just starting to build. The backside's not too crazy yet. Still just sort of a mellow scene out there. But everybody's starting to arrive. Chad Brown, he was there with his horses today. Pledger's here. Things are starting to look like the real Derby. So we'll see it all cook forward here soon.
It's beginning to look a lot like Derby. You're here today to talk about one of the horses you had the pleasure of seeing in the flesh this winter, Track Phantom. Let's start with sort of the tail of the tape on this one. Who is he? How did he get here?
Yeah, Steve Asmussen, right? This is his best shot. So trainer Asmussen, who's the best, right, to winning this trainer ever, but hasn't gotten that Derby. And this is his lone shot this year. Has a big, ownership group, LNC and Clark Brewster, Jerry Karoom, other guys like that. Rosario's been riding him all races except for the Gun Runner. Torres came in and rode him for that one. Won the Gun Runner, won the Lecomte, second in the Risen Star, and fourth in the Louisiana Derby. So he's been with us at Fairgrounds. Proved he loves to get the distance at 1 1/16th, but distance is definitely a question with this horse.
That was going to be my next question, because this is a horse in our pedigree video with Alex Henry, which you can find elsewhere on the YouTube channel. Questioned whether or not the extra ground was really his friend, and just the way he shaped in his races, being right there in some cases with pretty easy trips and then going away rather tamely in the end. Personally, I'm not sure about the 1.25 miles for him. What do you think? Do you think under the right circumstances with the right pace scenario, he might be able to get the job done on the first Saturday in May?
Yeah, I think for the most part, they all can. I think that's one big difference since we got to this point system, that we're just finding more stayers, right? More out of ground horses that we don't have to worry about those sprinters or just can get 7 furlongs or a mile, right? So for the most part, they all can with the right trip, if they're coming into the right race in the right way. And Steve's going to bring this one into the race in the right way. There's question marks with this one. We've got the blinkers on with Track Phantom in terms of the workouts recently on the track in the morning. I assume that's what we're doing in the race too. I can't imagine Steve pulling those off, but you never know. So we also saw this most recent workout this past weekend where he was really going slow through that opening quarter, I think about 26 seconds, and sped up, and it was really impressive in his quote unquote gallop out, but he was still going pretty strong there through 6 furlongs. So it's, he's been a front runner. He's had some good pressing trips early on. You could see in the Gun Runner specifically, but maybe he's going to rate just a little bit. It's what I wanted to see from him in the last race. I wanted to see him not necessarily take dirt, but just come from off of a horse. But he went to the front again in the Louisiana Derby and couldn't get it done as those closers came. Pete, the The last 2 races we've seen closers get it done. Sierra Leone, Risen Star got it at the wire, and then we saw Catching Freedom, Anna Marie, and Tuscan Gold be able to finish in front of him in the last, coming from off. So he had it easy on the lead in both races, but closers were able to come. The times weren't too fast. It's kind of interesting. Were they really setting up for closers? Was it a real closers flow and that was against him? Or did he just not seal the deal on a perfect setup?
Lots of questions, really, when it comes to the pace. I mean, you make a good point about the way they trained him the other day and the idea of the questionable stamina. Maybe sometimes in those instances, they won't use the early speed. I was thinking when I heard the blinkers were going on, which I do believe is the case for the race, that they were going to dead send and just hope that they got a better scenario this time. But, maybe your scenario is right, and they're thinking about trying to hold a little something for the finish going this distance. Give me your general thought on how the pace shakes out in this year's Derby. Who do you think the front runners are going to be?
Yeah, you always think the Derby, fast pace, they're going to go, get in position early is so tough. Jockeys are nervous, etc. Right? And some just don't have a shot buckling to the lead. But it's interesting. It could be a little bit of a slower pace than we've seen the past couple of years. I think T.O. Password should be ascend, right? I think that should be one that you expect to go. But, these horses coming in from other places, how they get out of the gate, do they have that sort of alacrity? A word I pick up from you, my man, that we need to see is always a big question. Then we've got Dornoch. What's Dornoch going to do? The most recent work, he wasn't in front. He was still working behind Society Man, who's a closer. So that was curious to see. I'd rather see Dornoch on the lead and fighting horses off. I think that's his strength. We've also got Fierceness, right? For me, I think Fierceness is just a full send. I'm not sure if that horse has heart. He hasn't proven it, right? So I think he's just a full send and just run away with it type of horse, a true sort of like Baffert style of trying to get it done. Just go to the lead and keep going. Those 3 are the ones that I think could be in front of him. Just a touch maybe, Encino maybe as well. But so he could just be right there in the mix and just hoping to have enough left to get it done. The way they worked this weekend makes me think that we're going to come from off of it. But you would think blinkers on that might sort of send more. But more than anything, his problem is fighting off those closers, right? That's where he's been gotten in trouble. He's been able to fight off anybody who's close to him. He's really good at pulling away from Common Defense or Nash or whoever's right there. But those closers, he hasn't been able to come back on very well.
2 more questions for you, my friend, and we'll
Yep.
start with one, really the bottom line, as it were, the verdict when it comes to Track Phantom. Will he be on your tickets? How high up on your tickets will he be if he is?
Yeah, he's won at first blink. I was like, you know what, this would be a really valuable one to toss, right? To get skinny in terms of, Super Vector, the whole deal, right? Just get him out of there altogether. But I liked how he moved. He's really got a powerful stride. One thing that Billy Pettingale, great all-time legend around the racetrack and fairgrounds clocker for years, taught me is counting those strides from the quarter pole, right? And this last work, I saw 52 strides coming home, and that's a really nice move. So he's got powerful strides. I trust Steve Asmussen. I think the only way he wins is if the Fierceness sort of doesn't break well, kind of gets caught, and Track Phantom is able to run down somebody like T.O. Password, who he should be able to make mincemeat of, or Dornoch, I believe. But it's hard for me to see that necessarily being the case. I want to put money behind it, so he's on my tickets. I'm going to use him in that B spot to try to work him through in the way I cycle my ticket structure. So I do think he might be coming into a good race here, but his form definitely went south. Looking at Thorograph from the gun runner. Speed figures and with Brisnet and Byers show he ran better last time. There's a lot of question marks around this horse, and if the value's there, I definitely want to have a piece of him.
Just about out of time, but I do want to ask you about that A line on your tickets and who you got there, though I will point out to viewers, we are going to have a whole other video on Kentucky Derby pace. You're going to want to check that out. Subscribe to the In the Money YouTube channel. That's the best way to never miss one of our videos. We got you covered for this year's Kentucky Derby. And then also just encourage folks to leave a comment. Let us know what you think of Track Phantom or the Kentucky Derby pace and where he's going to be positioned. We love to keep the conversation going in the comments. So now we get to the big one for you, my man. Who's going to win this year's Kentucky Derby?
Fierceness for me is the most likely winner, but Catching Freedom is my horse right now. I thought he ran so well to come from all the way back to win that Louisiana Derby. As we mentioned, the pace wasn't that strong. He's a horse that, I've been watching closely all along. I've always liked him. He's shown his heart. He's been able to deal with trouble. He's got a lot to offer. And it's just, he on the track, he is just neck bowed. he is telling everybody he's the man. Whether he's fast enough, right? We haven't seen that figure yet. Whether he's fast enough is the question, but I think we should be able to get some good value. I like him to win it. Fierceness and Sierra Leone are my other A's. Those three do seem dangerous.
Kevin, great stuff. We'll check in with you next week from the grounds.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete.
Next up on the show, another one of the hosts here on the In the Money Media Network, hoping he's going to have some fun additional Kentucky Derby coverage for us. But what he definitely has is great educational content every week. If you're one of the new players who found us through our YouTube channel and you're looking to get better, Spencer Luginbuhl's podcast, Redboard Rewind, is basically the audio version of one of the old handicapping books players like me grew up on. You're going to want to check that out for sure. He's here today not to talk about his show, really, but instead to talk about a horse called Catalytic. Spencer, I wanted to get the lowdown on this horse. Who is he and where did he come from?
So Catalytic's a horse coming out of Gulfstream Park, obviously ran against Fierceness in the last race in that Florida Derby. This is a horse that, you could say has really done nothing wrong, has a win in the maiden, runs a solid second off a long layoff, then comes back and runs a big 90. And listen, it's hard to run from 6.5 going all the way up to a mile and an eighth. I just, for this one, coming into this race, Florida form has been pretty good, I feel like, if you look at through past derbies. So I think this one is definitely one of the chances to, make some noise come Derby time.
We'll get to your sort of verdict on Catalytic and the rest of this field a little bit later in the video. Certainly a horse that's going to be at the bigger end of the odds spectrum. What's your guess as to how they're going to bet this horse? Will he get, because of the how prime the Florida Derby's been, will he attract a little bit of attention? I mean, he was so far from Fierceness, it's hard to think that's going to give him like any kind of huge form boost. What sort of price are you expecting on Catalytic?
Obviously, definitely double digits. I mean, for me, any horse from once they're 10 to 1, I kind of just clump them together. 10 to 1 to me is kind of the same as 50 to 1. The public just doesn't like these type of horses. Listen, went off at 29 to 1 last time, ran second. I think that when you have horses that show decent form of hitting the board, when they have long shot odds, you have to circle those races and figure out, okay, why did he run so well? And can he reproduce that same type of race today?
Safi Joseph, the trainer, prolific winner of races in South Florida. Do you think he might be ready to take his act out of town and succeed on a stage like Churchill Downs?
Safi's one of those guys where I think streaky when it comes to him. See if he has a good Oaks day. I don't know how many runners he's going to have on the card that day, if he has any at all. But at least if he wins one or two, maybe give this one a little bit more of a bump up in form. Like Safi had a couple of these guys ready and primed. Obviously, every trainer is trying to have every horse ready and primed for Derby and for the Oaks days. But when trainers are trying to win with a couple, then you can kind of give it a little bit more of a push towards that trainer side of the equation.
He was clearly the other horse. I mean, obviously, the Florida Derby kind of a one-horse race with Fierceness, but he was pretty clearly best of the rest, which I think is a little interesting, especially, as you said, going from 6 furlongs to 9. That's a significant increase in distance. How far do you think Catalytic ultimately wants to run?
When I see this type of horse, and obviously showed speed, just got blown away by a better horse, Catalina Cruiser, distorted humor on the bottom. I think this one isn't a pure mile and a quarter, but I think, as they always say, everyone going a mile and a quarter, it's only how fast they can go that proves the point.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm with you. I think feels like one that might be topping out more at that mile and an eighth and might ultimately be a little bit better going shorter. Let me ask you now, Spencer, really the key question with Catalytic regarding this year's Kentucky Derby. What's his ceiling?
For me, it's going to depend on if horses, either don't run to their, prior form or whatnot. I think that this horse can be anywhere in the top of the field. I definitely think that, when horses run 90s, and obviously I feel like 100 buyer is what we're looking for out of these preps and stuff. And obviously Fierceness ran a 110, which was huge. He's in there with 12 other horses. Now, can he get the same type of trip and maybe a couple back up? But I think when it comes down to, the exotics, am I going to have him second or first? Probably not. Is he third or fourth for supers? Absolutely can be a part of it. And at, 10, 20, 30 to 1, depending on which way they go with this horse, I mean, you have to include these type of horses, especially on Derby when you're playing these bigger tickets.
Yeah, I think 30 to 1 plus easy. I could, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that grade one form is going to depress it, but it feels like you will get that kind of price if you do want to include underneath. I need to ask you your general opinion of the race. Maybe the horse to start with is the favorite, Fierceness. Obviously, I think if you're building a catalytic case, you would probably have to like Fierceness at least a little bit. Where do you stand with him and the rest of these at the top of the market?
We'll go back to my show I just had back on that day with Brian Nadeau. Brian kind of said, out of all the preps, Fierceness ran the best one, and it's good for Gulfstream to obviously have that type of race. I'm completely against this horse in the Derby. In and out form is something I follow very, very strongly. If you look at it, he had a couple wet track races, then he ran in the juvenile, blew him away with 105, came right back after that with an 84. Now he runs 110 again. Listen, this horse can run a 99 and still win the race, but I don't believe this horse is going to run 115 or 110 back again. I don't want to take horses in 20 horse fields with buyers that I think are going to go down. So I'm completely against Fierceness. My main of the top three, Sierra Leone is very, very good. I love Catching Freedom. This is another one. Obviously, been talking over at the fairgrounds with another one, Kevin Kilroy, who I love having on my show. And I had this horse in Louisiana Derby. I just think that I want the horses that are improving every single race. And now we have a guy, Brad Cox, who everyone knows, one of the better trainers in North America. This guy has been improving this horse every single race. Listen, a 97 to a 105 is not the biggest leap now, and we only need 5 points dropping from Fierceness. Yes, Catching Freedom is not the sexiest price of the bunch, but I mean, out of the top three, this is the one I think I want on top for sure.
You make a very compelling case. You make a really good point about looking for a horse that you think is going to run their best race. It's even a Fierceness liker like me. It's impossible for me to make the case that he's going to run faster than that. So, you sometimes, I talk about the condition arrow. The condition arrow on him is pointing sideways at best. I think he has enough in hand. We'll see what happens. But I definitely respect your opinion. I think you make a good case for your thoughts. And you mentioned both Brian and Kevin. They're elsewhere here in our Monster Pod videos, so folks should check around on YouTube. Look for those. Leave us your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about catalytic as a converter? I almost. What do you think? A contender was the word I was looking for. Who are some other long shots you want to put in underneath? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments, and make sure to check out Spencer's Red Board Rewind show for Derby and every week if you want to learn more about the game. Spencer, thank you so much.
You got it. See you soon.
Very special guest up next for one of our mini pods. This is a man who's been doing so much amazing work behind the scenes, helping us out with our free newsletter, inthemoneypodcast.com/email, helping us out on the In the Money Plus side, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. He's also the man we gave the dirty work. He's been creating the Derby top 10 lists you've been watching on YouTube. If you're a regular over there, help us out and subscribe to that channel. By the way, I speak of Eric DeCoster. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing great because we're just a week and change from the Kentucky Derby, and it's the best time of year.
Is this a race that you always do this level of work for, or have we definitely caused you to do a little bit more early searching and finding with the various tasks we've been giving you?
I mean, over the months, yes, I probably put in this much work, and I get to keep the list together, which is just an added bonus for me as well. But as we get closer, between my own personal looks at it and taking care of other people's stuff and proofing and whatnot, I like to tell people I think I know more about every Derby horse than just from all the different layers of content. But I love it that way. I mean, at least I can say I'm prepared.
That's right. And we're going to get to your overview of the race as a last question. Stick around till the end of the video to hear that. We also encourage you to give your comments in all these videos on the various contenders we talk about. For me, this horse, we're going to talk about Epic Ride. Pretty interesting. We'll get your verdict on him, but yeah, let's hear it in the comments. What do you think of Epic Ride? Who are your potential interesting long shots for this year's Kentucky Derby? Let's start out with more of a biography of Epic Ride. How did he get here? I know currently he's on the outside looking in, but feels very likely he's going to make the race. I'd love to get a little bit of background on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's right on the door as of now. He's one out, so as we know, the Derby can change a lot 2 days before. So there's a good chance if he stays healthy, he'll be racing. So that's a good confidence booster. He made his first 4 starts at Turfway on the Tapeta, and he lost on debut going short just by a little. It was a very encouraging run. And in his next start, he just aired. I mean, he won for fun, won by, 5 lengths, could have won by more. It was pretty under wraps. And one thing about him that you kind of notice if you go back and watch his replays is he is very green early on in his career, and he probably still has some of those tendencies. But it was very evident, even in winning, there's a lot he had to figure out mentally. Well, he went to the Leone Stakes next, kind of the first race in that 3-race series at Turfway for their Derby points. It didn't carry points, but it led into the next. Won that for fun, but on the wrong lead, looking very silly. And so that made him the big favorite for the Battaglia, obviously good local form, earning Derby points, and then he lost to Encino. But that's not the worst thing in the world, it turns out, losing to Encino, because he'll be well regarded coming into the Derby. And he kind of beat himself. He's a horse who had kind of needed the lead at times, and he wanted to be forward and have a clean face. Well, he got squeezed out early. They went after him, and it took him out of his element. He was rank, he struggled, but he still fought on. So that's another sign of his greenness, but you also love to see a horse who can fight. And then that obviously led into his next start, the Bluegrass, where he ran that very impressive third in my eyes behind Sierra Leone and Just a Touch.
It was an interesting race. A lot of people have gone back and forth about it. There's been some talk that I don't necessarily agree with, that it was a big speed day on Bluegrass Day. I would describe it merely as being kind to speed, and I feel like the hot pace in there leveled the playing field. One of the things that impressed me the most about Epic Ride was his ability to stick on despite those fast fractions. How do you see this year's Bluegrass in terms of flow for Epic Ride? Are you marking him up, marking him down, or leaving him kind of neutral coming out of that?
I move him up, maybe not as much as Just a Touch. I think that's fair. I know Time Form was very kind to Just a Touch, and I think that was the right move because he did sit close to a very quick horse in Top Connor, and who's a very good horse, but we saw how much he folded in the late stages, and Just a Touch kept on. But then you also have to move up Epic Ride because of that, because he was just off of Just a Touch, and he was wider than Just a Touch, and it was his first dirt race for Epic Ride, and that's a big difference for a horse. You never know. I mean, it's basically like going from turf to dirt. So the fact that he stuck in so well, he did not back up really at any point. He did get outrun late, but he did not back up. And I think the biggest thing for me was he finished on the correct lead. At no point in the race was he really on the wrong lead. And so that's just another step in the mental progression of this horse that I think makes him very intriguing, something you won't maybe read on your PPs, but mentally he is clearly having things click a little bit more. And back to Time Form, he ran the same number as Sierra Leone, who's going to be heavy first or second choice. So I think that's a very intriguing fact there.
I think you've tipped your hand on your answer to this question already, but I have to ask it. Is Epic Ride a live long shot in this year's Kentucky Derby?
Absolutely. I'll be preaching that to the choir, so I'm okay if I tip my hand because, I like everyone, I'm always looking for the live long shot. This year, I haven't had a horse. I've been waiting for this guy to get in because I just think he's doing all of the right things. He might not be perfect, but he's an improving product mentally and physically, and he's also going to love the 1.25 mile. He's by Blame. That's enough to do it. And then there's some good stuff on the dam side, too, to really punch it home.
What price are you expecting on Epic Ride?
I don't think he'd be any less than 35, 40 to 1. I think he was 50 to 1 in the Bluegrass, which on that day surprised me. I thought he was a much better contender than some of the horses who were high single digits. That's obviously personally, but he brings his race to the table every time, and he does it impressively. And I haven't heard much chatter about him even up to this point. So I think that there's enough horses, enough money that'll flow elsewhere where you'll get a nice price on him from a win perspective.
And I think, even if the win pool is a little bit depressed, as we've seen that phenomenon with no horse being that big of a price, probably a horse that is going to be reflected of the huge long shot odds in the eyes of the public in bets like the Exacta, the Trifecta, the Superfecta, where he's probably, I'm assuming you're going to tell me, more likely to end up running in underneath than to win the thing outright. Or is that a mischaracterization of your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage in the game, anything can happen after the draw. I think if I can picture a perfect trip for him where he can't lose, then yeah, maybe I'd find him on top. But realistically, he is more of that underneath contender that we talk about. I think that he is the ideal underneath contender because while the talent might not be a Fierceness, a Sierra Leone, who we know at their best are basically unbeatable, he, once again, brings it every time. And that's what you need in a horse in the Kentucky Derby. If you look over the years, those types who are hard knocking tend to finish well in second, third, and fourth, fifth.
I'd be remiss and accused of a host fail if I didn't ask, having worked on the top 10 list all winter long for us. Again, you can find those videos elsewhere on our YouTube channel here in the Money Media. But I got to ask, who are your top contenders for winning the race? Does it dovetail perfectly with that last top 10, or has your opinion evolved in?
I still, the more I look at it, the more I do agree with the general public. It's a 2-horse race because I can't find that horse who is more talented than Fierceness and Sierra Leone. But I have hated this entire Derby trail, and the only word I can use is hated how much quirkiness they have. Sierra Leone's inability to really finish, Fierceness's lack of heart, it seemed, when he's slightly tested. I mean, that frustrates me. Dornoch is a horse I still kind of like, even though I know the Bluegrass wasn't great. It really is post-dependent and trip-dependent in that regard. I still think he has all the talent in the world, but he's one that has struggled mentally, but unlike maybe a Fierceness, a Sierra Leone, an Epic Ride, he doesn't seem to have figured that part out yet. So that's discouraging. So like I said, maybe 2 horses, but there's a few I'm still keeping in mind.
And I mean, in terms of exactas, the 4 you've mentioned, assuming you can split Fierceness and Sierra Leone, and I will say it doesn't seem that likely that they're both, I mean, it could happen, but it doesn't seem that likely to me for exacta purposes that they're both going to fire their best shot. If you want to mix in a couple long shots like Epic Ride and Dornoch with each of them, depending on how you construct your tickets, you could still get something that really pays. Speaking of things that pay, check out In the Money Plus. Eric's been doing a great job over there coordinating content. It's the place to get all the best stuff that we've got. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus. For that, Eric, thank you so much. We'll do another show very soon.
All righty.